All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm hoping you can hear me right now, and it looks like you can. My name is Josh Coco. I am the executive director over at the Rosenstiel School, and I wanted to run through a couple of things that are going to happen throughout the day today. The first thing is that we are asking everybody next to their name to be able to add undergrad or grad. You can check in the chat. I've sent some instructions on how to do that, but if you can't see the chat, there are two ways to do this. On your computer, you can click on your name under your personal video square, and then just make that change right there. And then if you're on a phone or tablet, you can go to participants, select the name and more, then change the name. So that is the first thing. We're hoping to change everybody's names in here, and I will resend that out a couple times throughout the day. The second thing we have is please stay muted. We are going to constantly be watching that and making sure that it is muted, but we want to make sure that it's kind of very smooth throughout this process. And then the last thing we have is that we are recording this and we will email it out to everybody afterwards. What we're going to do kind of throughout this day is going to be at 10 a.m. through about 11:30. We're going to do a handful of talks. We've also got Emma Pontes, who is our PhD student, who is over on campus right now, and will be giving actual tours of some of the facilities over there. And then after that, 11:30, we are going to split you in between grad and undergrad. The goal is to be able to have you ask direct questions to faculty, staff, to be able to get some of those answered. So with that, I think I am now, I also want to introduce a couple other people. Sean Kennelly, who is with our Graduate Studies Office, can answer questions about PhD and MS. So if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat button and talk to any of these people as well. This is just one for Sean. And then the other is Craig Purcell, who is with the MPS office. He is there to answer any questions as well as it relates to the Master of Professional Science degree. We'll have other people obviously throughout this that if you have questions about their work, studies, things like that, please feel free to reach out to them and start a private chat with them. We are going to collect the messages in the chats as well. So if we don't have time to get to some of those questions, we will answer those questions and then send those out in email following as well. So kind of just wanted to start with all of that. But from here, I want to introduce our Dean of the Rosenstiel School, Dean Ronnie Avasar, and he's going to talk to y'all for a couple minutes about the school. So take it away, Ronnie.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Sorry, first of all, that we have to do that this way, though it's not necessarily too bad. It's a good opportunity to see names associated with some of the faces. Not everybody has put a video on. Anyway, my true pleasure to welcome everybody to the school. I know that a large number of you have already committed to come to the school, and we are delighted to welcome everybody. And those of you that are still thinking about what to do, let's hope that in spite of the not fantastic capability to see what is really happening at the school, let's hope that you will get encouraged to continue your application and hopefully will get accepted. You see the background that I have is not in fact a real background from Rosenstiel, but it is honestly not very different than that. We are sitting right on the water in the Biscayne Bay, and to some extent, the landscape is even better than what you can see on the background here that was graciously provided by Zoom. I like to describe the school with 4 numbers so that, I think that those 4 numbers are extremely significant when you make a decision to come or not to a particular location. And those 4 numbers are easy to remember: 400, 300, 200, and 100. Okay? 400 is the number of undergrad students that we have. So the size of the class that we recruit every year is on the order of 100. We are increasing that number gradually because as a mission for our school, we are in fact interested to deliver more opportunities for undergrad education. So right now, however, the typical class is about 100 students. And obviously the selection is quite complicated and difficult. So if you have been selected to come, congratulations, because out of the, roughly speaking, 40 to 42,000 applicants for the University of Miami, you have been selected as one of the top 2,000 that are going to be coming to the school. So the criteria is very complex, and it's a great achievement to be accepted. So 400 undergrad students. 300 is the number of graduate students that we have. Okay, so out of the 300 graduate students, roughly speaking, half of them are professional masters, half of them are PhD students. PhD students focus on research and their research goals that last typically about 4 or 5, sometimes 6 years, but with an average of about 5 years to do a PhD. And that's a degree that is very dedicated to research. 150 professional masters. Many of you here in these presentations are looking to participate in this program. And honestly, it is, in my opinion, a fantastic program when your overall goal is to get into real or into a job after you complete your master's. There is always the possibility, if you change your mind on your way, to transition to a more research-oriented degree. We offer that possibility, but it is certainly a great way to get a master's degree that is very appropriate and relevant to enter the real life after school. 200 is the number of scientists that we have at the school. And those are typically people that just completed a PhD and are working with us on the, roughly speaking, 200 research projects that we have ongoing at the school. The last number, 100, is the number of faculty, and that includes the permanent faculty of the school, as well as teaching faculty and research faculty. So for those of you interested, again, to come into the undergrad program, you notice that the ratio of 400 students over the 4 years, or about 100 students per class, for about 100 faculty is quite exceptional. And that allows us to deliver a program very much focused on research activity. You will have the opportunity to participate in research during your undergrad degrees, and that's certainly a great advantage of the school. The ratio also of almost 1-to-1 or 1-to-4, depending on whether or not you look at the particular class or the entire cohort of undergrad students, is in fact probably one of the best, if not the best, in the country for a research institution like ours. You can notice also the ratio between graduate students and undergrad students, and certainly from scientists and undergrad students. You will notice that that entire ratio of the research ongoing as compared to the number of students that we have is an extremely high ratio. For the graduate students, the program that we have offers an opportunity for the master students, so the professional master students offer an opportunity to complete a degree within about 15 months, including an internship. So, it's a 2 semesters of the classes plus an internship. and that is and that is a program that you can complete typically within 12 to 15 months for those of you that are in a hurry to complete their degrees and start a job. So that's what I wanted to do really this morning. Again, I would have preferred to host you on campus and show you the facilities that we have, even though you are going to be getting some of that through video. There is nothing that replaces the real feelings that you have when you come on campus, the beauty of the landscape, the facilities that we have that are amazing for education and research. And again, I am sorry that we cannot do that on campus, but I certainly hope to see all of you early on during the next academic year, which for now, we are still planning to start more or less on time as originally scheduled. We are hoping that the pandemic is going to be completely over by then, and that we will be able to start a new school year just trying to forget as quickly as possible this past year. So I'll be staying on if you have some questions eventually. I think that through the chat system is a good way, but I'll be also available during the day to answer some of the questions. So have a great day, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you. And Josh, back to you.
Thank you, Dean Avasar. All right, so with that, we are going to move on to our shark research and conservation area, and we're going to go to Ms. Chelsea Black, who's going to talk a little bit about that program.
All right, good morning, everyone. So give me just a second while I get this presentation going. Okay. All right. So my name is Chelsea Black. So I actually just finished up my master's degree at the University of Miami. So it focused on the bacteria of sharks. So we kind of wanted to see what bacteria is on sharks and kind of relate that to the species health, but also kind of the health of the sharks in Miami and the health of the environment. So I actually just finished that up this semester. And I love the University of Miami so much that I'm staying on for my PhD. So I'm actually just starting my PhD, and that's going to look at more of satellite tracking these large animals and comparing that to marine biodiversity hotspots. So, right, we kind of want to know where these sharks are going, where they're spending this time before we can really protect them. So that's a little background about me. Now I'm going to kind of tell you guys about the University of Miami Shark Research and Conservation Program, which is run by Dr. Neil Hammerschlag. All right, so hopefully that video worked for you guys. If not, you can definitely find it on our social media, www.sharktagging.com. So sorry about that technical difficulties. But yeah, so our program, we are based out of Miami, but we actually have research projects going on all over the world. So for example, we actually just got back from the Bahamas where we studied pregnant tiger sharks. So we're satellite tagging pregnant tiger sharks in the Bahamas, and we're trying to figure out where they're going. So there's this area called Tiger Beach in the Bahamas, and Dr. Neil Hammerschlag, he went there and he realized, hey, there's a lot of female tiger sharks and a lot of them are pregnant, but there aren't really males. But we aren't seeing pups there. So we're trying to figure out if those sharks are kind of using that habitat as kind of a gestation area to afford them protection. But once they leave those protected waters, where are they going to give birth? So we actually satellite tag them after we do an ultrasound in the field, and we're tracking where those sharks are going. So we also have projects in South Africa. So we're actually studying great whites. If you guys have seen Air Jaws Strikes Back, that's us, that's our program. We work with collaborators over there. And we're also starting another project to look at smaller cat sharks in South Africa. We want to see how these marine protected areas there are affording protection to smaller species, right? So not only are large apex predator sharks important, but we got to think about those smaller species. And then we actually just started a research project in the Galapagos, and we're looking at blacktip sharks over there. So we're not only based in Miami, we actually have a lot of collaborators all over the world. So what we do here in Miami is we actually have a unique access to like the backwaters that we call Biscayne Bay, right? So not only are we conducting research, but we're actually able to take out citizen scientists on the boat with us. So we'll take out school groups or corporate groups and we'll get them in the field hands-on, and they'll actually help us measure these sharks, tag these sharks. They can watch us do blood work on the boat and see really what we're doing. So we're actually giving access to a lot of people who normally wouldn't have access to the water. And sometimes some of these kids have never even been on a boat before. They've never been out on the water, and we're giving them that experience really hands-on. We also do summer research programs. So we do offer opportunities to high school students from all over the country that can come spend a few weeks with us in the summer. And they can come out and get some hands-on research skills. You know, are they interested in marine science? Is that something that they want to do? And then we also have college courses for college students who aren't necessarily students at the University of Miami. Sometimes they are, but they really want to get their foot in the door into shark research or marine science. And we kind of provide them that opportunity of, okay, where do I start? Where do I go? And kind of get them talking about graduate school or, you know, these undergrad programs, and kind of helping them, we guide their path of, all right, what's next? I want to do shark research. How do I do it, right? So it's a really cool opportunity working with a lot of different people. So we're actually really busy throughout the year. So just to give you some examples of what we did in 2019. So our lab actually published 13 research papers. We spent 250 days on the water with over 1,600 citizen scientists, right? So that's 1,600 people that normally wouldn't have access to marine science or sharks, you know, and they're getting out in the field and they're physically doing research alongside of us. We tagged 575 sharks of 19 different species. 14 of those we actually satellite tagged. So those would be the 14 pregnant tiger sharks in Tiger Beach that we're now tracking. The largest shark that we tagged was a 4-meter great hammerhead, which is actually what's pictured here. So that was the biggest shark of 2019. And we appeared in 2 Shark Week episodes. So each year we also are on Shark Week. So if you guys have seen us before, that might be where you've heard of us. But yeah, so we actually get a lot of exposure in Shark Week, National Geographic, and we really just want to reach a lot of different people. So that's kind of a quick summary of our lab. Obviously, I could talk all day about sharks and shark research, but where you guys are going to learn a lot of questions that you probably have is on our website. So if you go to www.sharktagging.com, or you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or look us up on Facebook. And so since we do have undergraduate and graduate interns, you can apply to join our lab. So we do every semester have a few spots that open up after people graduate, and we'll take on undergraduate interns who are interested in sharks or marine science. And you actually don't have to have any experience to help us out, right? So we actually have students who major in math, computer science, but yeah. So, and then we actually do have a few spots opening up for maybe some potential MPS students. So you don't have to be a graduate student that was accepted into our lab to get your foot in the door, right? So if you head to our website, you can kind of learn more about us and the steps that you can take to apply. And like I said, in the fall, we will be looking for a few potential new interns. So with that, let me know if you have any questions. I'll be hanging around so I can answer some in the chat. And then I'm going to hand it back off to Josh. I think you guys are going to the library next. Thank you.
Thanks, Chelsea. All right, so we are going to head over to the library, and we will have Miss Ann talk a little bit about the Rosenstiel Library.
Well, hello and welcome. Let me go ahead and get my screen up, and then we can start the presentation. So welcome to the Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Science Library. We're your library on and off campus. My name is Ann Campbell, and I'm Access Services Supervisor here at the library. Everything in our presentation today can be found at the library website, which is library.miami.edu/Rasmuslug. The Rasmus Library is a one-floor library that offers both physical and electronic access to materials for our students. We've got rooms for meeting spaces, study groups, conference calls, and even interviews. Our rare book room, media room, map and chart room. We have study carrels, study tables in the main area, as well as soft seating. There's both Mac and PCs available for our students to use on campus, as well as GIS laptops for students to use. Now, we don't have a Starbucks in our library, but we do offer coffee and tea, so we do ask you bring your own cup with you. Now, the university library is actually part of a main group of libraries within the university. It's called UML. Our main campus library on Coral Gables campus, architecture, business, law, and music, also located on main campus. We also have access to our medical library and, of course, the Marine Library on Virginia Key. Any material that is circulating in those libraries is available to all of our students. You just have to request it, and they can be sent over to our library or the library of your choice. So what do you do if we don't have the materials that you're looking for? Right now, about 80% of our journals are available electronically online. So a good deal of what you're going to need is already going to be here. However, if you're looking for something that's not at the university, we actually can help you out with that. We do interlibrary loans and document deliveries. Interlibrary loan is a part of a worldwide organization that lets us request from other libraries and institutions to get the materials that you need. The only information that we need from you is going to be your Kane ID and Kane password when you log in, and the citation that you're looking for. And then we'll go out and find the materials that you're looking for. Library services. Students have access to research consultations with our librarians, with our GIS services and data services, tutoring, writing center, and more through the University Learning Commons. You can schedule one-on-one appointments in person, virtual appointments, or even phone or email. The GIS and data services are in the library once a week, and the writing center as well. So you'll always be able to have access to them. If you're not sure where you're going to start your research, the university offers research guides, and they're in most areas, subject areas within the university. As you can see, we offer marine ecosystem and society, marine biology, ecology, marine geoscience, atmospheric sciences, our new library resources, as well as OCE, our ocean sciences. What these will give you is a good jumping off point to show you where you can start your research. References and web resources, library catalog, core indexes and databases, proceedings, reports, and journals, as well as the librarian who is assigned for that area. So you can make direct contact if you need a little more information. If you feel comfortable diving right into databases, you can go ahead and go to the library database page. GeoRef, LinkedIn Learning, Web of Science, Scopus, PubMed, Science Direct, and even more are located on that site. And you just have to click on and find what you need. We also have access to the Adobe Creative Cloud for the entire suite for our students. So video tutorials are on there as well as some information. Now, library instruction. As you start your graduate and undergraduate degrees, you may want to keep a little bit more organized in terms of how you're keeping your references and citations. The university offers a few ways to do this. Mendeley, EndNote, and RefWorks are all available to our students to use. And library instruction can help you learn how to use those even more. Library instruction can happen online, group or class, by phone, email, or even virtually. And library instruction can go through any of the subject areas that the university has access to. Scholarly repository. For anyone looking to see what else has been published or what's out there within their subject area, the Scholarly repository is a great place to go. It houses our master's and PhD thesis, dissertations, technical reports, lab reports, internships, cruise data reports, and much more. Items can be searched, viewed, and downloaded. And then it also gives you a little extra. On the side here, the Plum Matrix is available. So you can see how many things have been downloaded, what the usage are, and how well spread out it is. The repository is currently undergoing an upgrade and facelift, and we look forward to rolling out the new site in the fall semester. Libraries, digital collections, and special collections. The digital collection includes photographs, manuscripts, and letters. We're looking forward to having our Sea Frontiers, one of the flagship publications of the Rosenstiel School, is currently being processed and will soon be available in our digital collection. I want to thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. The phone number's on the bottom, email, as well as both my name, Ann Campbell. I'm Access Services Supervisor, and our Library Director, Angela Clark Hughes. And now I will go ahead and send you back to Josh.
All right, thanks, Anne. So now we are about to go over to Miss Emma Ponce. She is definitely one of our super special students when we're talking about this area, just because Emma not only went through the undergrad program, but also went through the Master of Professional Science program and is now a current PhD student. So we are super excited to have Emma. She is on campus, and so you are going to actually get a visualization of campus, some of the labs, and we're going to showcase some of the different areas across campus. So we're super excited about that. She is an essential person on campus, so I don't want y'all freaking out and worrying. She is doing some research on corals, and she is very needed during this time. So at this point, I'm going to transfer y'all over to Emma and let her kind of start her tour.
All right, hello everybody. I'm glad to be able to hopefully, see you a little bit today. I'm glad at least you can maybe see me in person. So yeah, thanks so much, Josh. As Josh mentioned, I am actually here on the Rasmus campus right now, and I'm really excited to be showing you some of our different labs that we have and talk about some of the different research that we have going on. So I'm gonna quickly just rotate my camera so I can show you where I'm at. So right now I am in what's called the Sustain building. This is the newest building on our campus. I'm gonna give you a quick 360 view of the lobby in here. Essentially, like I said, this is the newest building on our campus. It's about 4 years old. Basically, the highlight of this building is what we call our hurricane simulator, which is behind this glass wall. So one of the reasons this building was built was in order to house our hurricane simulator, which is basically this concrete structure. So what happens is they can fill this concrete structure with ocean water. The other cool thing about this building is it does have plumbing set up to receive water straight from Biscayne Bay. So essentially this tank would be filled up about halfway with water, probably right to about there. And basically what happens is the way it works is they have a jet turbine from an airplane that blows winds up to 200 miles an hour. The wind essentially comes from this direction and goes through the tank like that. They also have metal paddles that push the water to kind of create wave action. So with those two things, with the wind speed and water movement, they're actually able to replicate a Category 5 hurricane. And the reason that's so cool is because this is actually the only lab in the world that can replicate a Category 5 hurricane in terms of its wind speed and water movement. So we're very lucky to have this kind of awesome facility that's able to do that. In terms of the research that's done here, it's mostly atmospheric research, I would say. A lot of looking at how gases are exchanged between the ocean and the atmosphere. Obviously, a lot of hurricane production research. This lab also takes both undergraduate and graduate students. So in terms of undergraduate students, they're able to just kind of contribute to the ongoing research goals of the lab. And also in their senior year, they're able to do what's called a senior thesis. So you can basically come up with kind of your own research project. And I'm seeing people that want to say they want to see it in action. I totally understand. If you guys do wind up coming here, they run this, I would say, maybe a couple times a week, depending on their experiment schedule. So if you do wind up coming to this campus, I can almost guarantee that you'll see it in person. But yeah, this lab has a lot of opportunities for both undergraduate and graduate students to conduct research in. Like I said, mostly atmospheric. So yeah, that is our wave tank. And again, the rest of the lobby. So now we're gonna move on to a marine biology lab. And I'm just gonna walk down our little hallway right here. So the other big feature of this building is this is where most of our wet labs and dry labs are. That means that this is where most of the aquatic research is being conducted. This is where most of our live animals live. Our live animals that are smaller, things like invertebrates like corals and sea slugs, and also fish. And then at the hatchery, we do have some larger fish. You'll notice that on our walls, we have whiteboard walls that we can basically write data and draw little pictures to each other. So I'm now entering Dr. Chris Langdon's Ocean Acidification Coral Lab. This is actually the lab that I'm a PhD student in. So I'm here today just kind of showing you guys what our dry lab looks like. You'll notice we have Yasmin back there who's wearing a mask. She's practicing her social distancing. She is a graduate student intern who is considered essential. So what she's doing right now is she is actually doing some water chemistry. So essentially what we do in this lab is we look at the effect of ocean acidification and temperature increase on coral physiology. And we work with a species called Acropora cervicornis. So essentially our experiment is such that we have 8 different tanks where half of those tanks are high CO2 and the other half of those tanks are low CO2, and they're all set to the same temperature, right? So our low CO2 tanks are kind of considered our controls, and our high CO2 tanks obviously are the ones that we're wanting to see the response. So what we do is we're able to look at their tissue response to these treatments. The way that we do that is we actually do a process called blasting. So most of our corals look like this. These are just the skeletons that we have. These were corals that were once in our experiment. And essentially, once these corals have been sitting in our experiment for a couple months, that's usually the amount of time it takes them to acclimate and for us to see physiological changes in their tissue. Once they've been sitting there for a few months, we actually strip the tissue off of their skeleton, and we're able to analyze that tissue for a bunch of different biological properties, things like how fat the coral is, how much chlorophyll it has, and a couple other biological properties. So this is our station where we do all the blasting. We have lots of different tools that help us strip the tissue off of the coral. And so I was mentioning Yasmin earlier. She's doing some water chemistry. So we use these machines to essentially measure what's called the dissolved inorganic carbon content of the water in our tanks. And we do this because we're basically manipulating the chemistry of the water in our tanks, right? We are actively pumping carbon dioxide into the water to make the water more acidic. And so, as you can imagine, it's quite a fickle process. Since our tanks are flow through, it can be a little difficult to maintain a precise DIC concentration. So because of that, we take water from our tanks and we measure it every week to make sure that the range is kind of what we want it to be. So that's what Yasmin is working on. And you can see we have lots of backed up water samples. Yasmin has been awesome, and she's been running a lot of these water samples recently. So that's kind of the chemistry side of things. So this is our dry lab. This is where all of the biological tissue analysis happens. And now I'm going to take you into our wet lab, which is where we have our actual experiment going on. So I'm coming in here. And again, we have some more essential workers. So this is Khadija. Khadija is a third-year PhD student with Dr. Langdon. And we're considered essential essentially because we have live animals. So we basically need to feed these animals. We need to clean them a couple times a week. And we essentially just need to make sure that they're staying healthy so we can continue collecting data on them. And I essentially just turned off the pump, so I'm going to show you what our corals look like right now. So the tank that I'm showing you right now is our high CO2 treatment. And if any of you guys are coral nerds like me, you might notice that these guys don't look so great. They look very pale. Exactly, yeah, cervicorn is the staghorn, so this is the staghorn coral we're working with. These guys don't look so great. A lot of them look very pale. They're definitely stressed out, right? This is kind of the stress response we see in corals is bleaching when the temperature gets too high. But what I also wanted to show you is our low CO2 treatment, in which the corals look a lot darker. So from there, it's not super dramatic, but as someone who works with these corals every day, it's clear that our top tanks definitely have darker corals than our bottom tanks, which essentially means that the corals are retaining more algae, they're not bleaching as much, and they're generally just less stressed than our than the low CO2 treatment. So this is our setup. Like I said, we have 8 different tanks. We have plumbing around the ceiling that pulls in water straight from the ocean. So we're able to, we don't have to make our own seawater, which is really nice. And we do have to supplement their diet because of it. So we feed them. So Khadija right now is working on rotating some corals so they all experience kind of the same tank treatments. So that's our wet lab. Lots of fun. And now the last biology lab that I'm going to show you is what we call the Aplysia lab. So Aplysia are basically sea slugs. The common name is California sea hare, and they're super adorable. I'm going to come in here and show you guys in a moment. So there is some music playing in here. I'm going to walk in really briefly and kind of show you the slugs, and then as we walk out, I'll talk more about the research that's done on that. So this is our Aplysia lab. Again, we have another essential employee working hard to make sure our Aplysia stay clean and happy. And so we have lots of little tiny babies. They start off super small. I'm going to put my hand in here for scale. So you can tell how small they are. They're really tiny. And when they're this young, these guys are relatively freshly hatched. So when they're this small, they can actually use the surface tension of the water to stay on the surface, which is kind of cool. So you can see there's lots of little guys in there. And so those guys are relatively small. The cool thing about this too is that each of these rows, every animal in each of these rows are brother and sister, which is really cool. So these numbers indicate which batch they came from or which set of parents they came from. So everyone on this row is brother and sister. They came from the same batch. And these guys are a little bit older. They're a little bit bigger. You see this guy's coming out of the water over here. And let me see if I can get a better angle. But yeah, they're very cute. You'll notice all this red algae in the tank as well. That's what we feed them. And we grow that as well across the street in order to feed these guys. So as we move to the back of the lab, they get bigger and bigger. This row back here is basically the oldest slugs that we have in this lab. And this is what we also call mating row. So these guys are in their mating pairs. And you'll notice in each one of these tanks, we have 2 very large slugs. And because these slugs are hermaphroditic, meaning they have both male and female sex organs, they can essentially take any 2 slugs, put them in a tank together, and they will generate eggs. And so you can see these guys are much bigger. There's a lot of red algae in there. And I'm looking for an egg bundle, which I don't, oh, these guys are a little bit easier to see. But again, my hand for scale, they're quite big. They're roughly about the size of a football. They're super cute. This guy looks very active. And so in terms of the research that's being done on these guys, it's mostly neurological. So these guys actually, I know it might be kind of a surprise, but sea slugs actually have very similar neurons to humans, and their neurons are actually very large and easy to manipulate, which is really cool. So because of that, we do a lot of neurological research on these guys. We do a lot of research looking at things like Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, and other different kind of neurodegenerative diseases. They're a really good kind of marine science lab rat. So yeah, we also, the other cool thing about this lab is that They also grow and ship those animals to other institutions to run their own experiments on. So in addition to kind of running our own experiments on the slugs, we are also a hatchery for Aplysia, and the room we were just in is actually the only place in the world they can buy a slug for research, which is pretty cool. So I think we've seen the majority of some of the labs in this building. We talked about some slugs, we talked about some coral research. I'm now gonna pass it over to another PhD student, Ms. Liv Williamson, and she does some coral research as well that's a little bit different to what the Langdon lab does. So I'm gonna hand it over to her and she's gonna tell you more about the research that she does with her corals. Thanks, guys.
Here we go. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? My name is Liv Williamson. I am a PhD student in the Coral Reef Futures Lab. Thank you so much, Emma, for that great introduction. That was fantastic. And I'm glad that she got to show you a little bit of what our wet and dry lab facilities look like so that you can kind of have that in mind while we're talking about some of the other coral research that we do here. So I'm going to take this off of my face and try to share my screen with you so I can start the presentation. All right. Great, so hopefully everyone can see this. All right, so I'm going to be talking to you today about some of the coral reef research and restoration that we're doing here at the Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Science. As you heard from Emma, we have quite a few different labs working on corals. So I just want to all start everybody out on the same page. I'm sure lots of you are really, great coral experts that know exactly what's going on. But I want to just make sure that we all understand what a coral is and why they're important. So I'm just going to start off with what is a coral and what is a coral reef? Corals are animals. They're part of the phylum Cnidaria, which means that they're related to jellyfish and anemones. Basically, they're invertebrates. They are made up of a mouth with a ring of tentacles around them. So in this photo, you can see a close-up of some of those tentacles, and they have mouths in the middle of those tentacles. And then individuals are called polyps. So each little bump that you're seeing here in this picture with tentacles around it is a polyp. So that's one individual unit. And they grow together to make colonies of genetically identical polyps. So a colony that you'll see when you go snorkeling or diving, things like that, that's going to be, I just want to make sure that the chat is working here. Everything's good. Yes, fantastic. Oops, sorry. Just wanted to make sure that everybody could see. I haven't done screen sharing before. Great, so that's what a colony of corals is. And then these things are really, really impressive and exciting too, because they're actually made up of basically a consortium of other organisms. So the brown spots that you're seeing right now in this picture are actually algal cells. They're dinoflagellates, they are single-celled and they're photosynthetic, living in the coral tissue in a symbiosis with these corals. And that's a really essential part of coral success on coral reefs in the Caribbean, all over the world, is the symbiosis that they have with these algae because they photosynthesize, they give them the food that the corals need to grow and make these reefs. So corals are really, really amazing and important because they form the largest biogenic structures in the world. So they form reefs, they calcify, they grab calcium and carbonate out of the seawater and make skeletons, basically limestone skeletons below them, and that's how they grow over time. And this is responsible for creating these huge, beautiful reefs here in the Caribbean, all over the tropics. The Great Barrier Reef, you can see from space, that was all made by these tiny little animals with tentacles and mouths and single-celled algae living in them. It's pretty amazing that this happens. So actually, a lot of people don't know that here in Florida, we're home to the third largest reef tract in the world. So the Great Barrier Reef on Australia is the biggest, followed by a reef tract off of Belize, the Mesoamerican Reef Tract. And then here in Florida, we actually have over 350 miles of coral reefs, all the way from Port St. Lucie in the north down to the Dry Tortugas. This map doesn't even show all the way into the Dry Tortugas. So we have a lot of corals here in Florida. And for that reason, we rely on the ecosystem services provided by these reefs. Those include biodiversity. Coral reefs make up less than 1% of the ocean, but they're home to more than a quarter of all marine diversity. All marine animals, fish, lobsters, things like that, a quarter of them live on coral reefs at some point during their lives. So these ecosystems also support our fisheries, which are very important for our protein consumption as well as industry in coastal places. They protect our coastlines with this amazing 3D structure that they create. They actually attenuate wave action. Waves are less energetic as they pass over a reef, and thus we see less erosion in places where there are healthy reefs. A lot of the substances that we use in pharmaceuticals can be derived from animals that live on coral reefs, so they're very important for that reason. They also spur tourism here and all over the world. So people come to Florida, people go to the Great Barrier Reef to dive, to snorkel, even for the fishing that is supported by these coral reefs. And of course, they have immense recreational and cultural value to the places that live near them. So they're very important for a lot of reasons, not just because they're beautiful. Unfortunately, here in Florida and all over the world, there are a lot of threats facing these really important ecosystems right now. The biggest one being global climate change. That tends to affect corals in two ways because of the warming of our global temperatures, including warming of the oceans. So corals are very sensitive to temperature and to ocean warming. In addition, as Emma began to describe, they're sensitive to ocean acidification. That's because they're calcifying organisms. So they need to sort of alter the chemistry around them to be able to build their skeletons. And as the water chemistry changes due to ocean acidification, that calcification process is inhibited. Additionally, there have been major disease outbreaks, especially here in Florida recently, killing off quite a few corals. The photo in this slide is actually a coral with disease. So you can see the healthy tissue with its happy polyps up in the top of this picture, and then the bare skeleton where disease has peeled away some of that tissue. So that's a huge problem that we need to work on as well. Pollution in the form of nutrients, such as runoff from agriculture, can cause algal blooms, which interfere with coral reefs and hurt coral reefs. And in addition, pollution in the form of plastics or sunscreens can actually be toxic to corals and hurt them. Overfishing indirectly hurts corals because a lot of the fish species that are overfished are responsible for helping keep the balance in a coral reef ecosystem, such that algae aren't growing too much and overgrowing corals. So overfishing is a major problem. Invasive species such as the lionfish here in the Caribbean can also indirectly impact these ecosystems, as well as just physical damage from coastal development, boat groundings, anchors, things that physically, smash, tear up, take away corals are problems as well. So unfortunately, because of all of these impacts, we've lost over 80% of coral reefs here in the Caribbean since the 1970s, which is a pretty big number. In addition, some populations of corals are down to less than 3% of their historical numbers, certain species. And for that reason, we have 7 species listed under the Endangered Species Act here in the Caribbean of corals, and arguably there should be more than 7 species. So what you're seeing in this photo is a reef of all dead corals. The skeleton is still there. They're recently dead, so they haven't eroded away, but there's no live tissue on those corals there. And so eventually that ecosystem will wear away and be flat, and that habitat that they create will be gone. So this is a huge problem and something that we at the Rosenstiel School are really committed to working on with our research in lots of different ways. So I'm going to talk to you about 2 labs here that really focus on restoring coral cover to reefs that have been degraded through 2 kind of main overarching strategies. One would be active coral gardening, so propagating and planting corals so that we can increase the cover where it's been lost, and then increasing coral resilience to some of those stressors that I talked about that are causing the declines in the first place. So these 2 labs are the Coral Reef Futures Lab, led by Dr. Andrew Baker, and the Learman Lab, which encompasses the Rescue a Reef program, led by Dr. Diego Learman. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what they do, starting with the coral gardening approach, because it's really important to just add corals back where we've lost them. So this approach basically starts with collecting fragments, which I'll talk to you about in a bit. This is just an overview. We then grow out these fragments so that they can become big enough to survive on the reef. We then outplant them to the reef to help restore coral cover where it's been lost. And then we monitor the recovery of these reefs to make sure that our strategies have been working and learn from that so that we can continue to improve our strategies. So that starts with collecting wild fragments from a reef somewhere around here in the Miami-Dade or Broward area. So this is the staghorn coral. It's one of the main species that we use in restoration in the Caribbean. It grows quickly, it's easy to be fragmented, and it's actually super endangered. It's down to less than 3% of its original population sizes in the wild. So it's very important that we think about trying to restore it. Something that's also really amazing about corals is that they can reproduce asexually. This means that they can be fragmented, and the two pieces of coral that resulted from that one original piece continue to grow and make their own new colonies. So this is a strategy that we really utilize for coral restoration. So we'll find a wild colony, we can fragment off only a little bit of that colony, so we're not actually hurting the original colony in the wild, and then bring those fragments to our nurseries. So these are PVC pipe coral trees. It's one of the main methods that we use for coral gardening, in particular for staghorn corals. And we build nurseries off the coast of Miami here that utilize our natural light and our natural sort of marine communities to keep these corals happy and growing. And it's basically like a forest gardening program where you'd use seeds and grow them to saplings and then be able to plant those saplings out into a forest that needs to be restored. So here's a photo closer up of those staghorn fragments on the PVC pipe trees. They hang there and they get a lot of water flow. You can see that their polyps are extended, their tentacles are out, so they're able to feed on some of the plankton that passes by them. And this really allows them to grow very quickly. And we like them to grow very quickly because that means that we can outplant them or fragment them again. So this allows us to take basically a few fragments from those wild collections and propagate them and make them into many, many, many fragments, hundreds of fragments over time for use in our restoration programs without having to collect any more from the wild. We've also been expanding into more massive coral species. As I said, there are 7 endangered coral species here in the Caribbean, so we want to make sure that our efforts are encompassing not only staghorns, but other ones that are also endangered. So up in the top left, we have Orbicella fabiolata, which is a mountainous star coral. Top right, we have Diploria labyrinthiformis, which is the grooved brain coral. In the bottom left, we have Pseudodiploria strigosa, which is the symmetrical brain coral. And in the bottom right, we have Montastria cavernosa, which is the great star coral. All of them are really important reef builders in Florida and throughout the Caribbean, and so we're starting to incorporate them into our efforts as well. And just like the staghorn, they can also be fragmented. We usually have to drill out circles basically from these colonies because they're much more massive. They're like boulders, so you can't really fragment a boulder all that easily. So we drill out usually circular or sort of more rounded colonies, little fragments, and then we will mount them onto plugs where they can then grow really quickly. So it's similar to the staghorn fragments, but they kind of work in a different way. And we tend to mount these horizontally on tables, these PVC pipe tables under the water in the nursery, because these species tend to like to be oriented horizontally. They don't do quite as well hanging off a tree. All right, so the next process is outplanting after our fragments have grown to a size in that nursery setting where they're going to be happy and healthy on the reef. We actually fragment them off of that nursery so that we can keep a small fragment still growing there on the coral tree or on the table. And then we bring the rest of that fragment to a reef site that needs to be restored. Usually we're using hard bottom substrate, so it used to have corals on it, but now it's kind of scoured. A lot of the corals have died. And so we need to affix new live coral tissue to them. These days, we're mainly using epoxy, which is that white clay-like substance that you see in this picture, as well as cement. So that's actually the gray underneath there, both of which adhere the coral to the reef. We've developed cement mixtures that are not harmful at all to the marine life there. And actually very quickly, these corals will skin right over the epoxy and the cement within probably a year, often even less time. You won't be able to see them at all because the coral tissue will grow right over that and they'll affix themselves to the reef. One of the really cool things about our program is that we utilize citizen science. So on most of our expeditions to outplant these corals, we actually bring members of the South Florida community with us, whether that be school groups, companies, organizations, basically people that can dive or snorkel, but that are mainly non-scientists, so that we're able to show them, A, how important coral reefs are, B, how cool the corals are when you see them up close, teach them that they're animals, teach them that they're these living beings and not just, you know, rocks. And C, allow them to have this really cool hands-on science experience, not only collecting the corals from the nurseries with us, but then also planting them out onto a reef site. So that's a really cool part of our program. And then finally, it's important to monitor, of course, the corals that you've outplanted. We want to make sure that they are growing, that our methods have worked, that these corals are able to adhere themselves to the reef. And the ultimate goal is that these populations will become sort of self-sustaining, that the corals here will be able to eventually reach a size where they can reproduce sexually as well as asexually, and thus begin to kind of naturally keep this process going, keep a positive feedback whereby our reefs are able to continue growing and being healthy. So as you can see, we used to use actually nails and zip ties. So this particular picture is a coral growing over the zip ties that we use to affix it to the reef. But you can see this is only in a few months of growth. The coral itself is building new tissue right over the materials that we use to outplant it. So that material is basically incorporated into the skeleton and more or less, you know, not being harmful to the reef at all. You can not even tell, usually after about a year, that we were there. It looks like a totally wild population. So I just wanted to show you what the progress can look like. So this is at the time of outplanting. You can see that there are a few little fragments basically that we've put out onto the reef and outplanted. And then 2 years later, this is the same site. That's 2 years of growth. These colonies are arguably probably sexually reproductive because of their size. And we also experience usually at least 85% survivorship with the fragments that we put out. So I think I saw that question here from someone in the audience. We aim for 80+% survivorship. And these days with the methods that we've honed over the years, we experience usually about 85+% survivorship of these fragments as we plant them out. So that's really, really exciting. So our history as a program, Rescue a Reef, to date we have restored 15+ restoration sites in Miami-Dade and Broward. In addition, we have led 60+ expeditions with 700+ citizen scientists and outplanted 5,000+ corals. So some other questions are, okay, so we're putting these corals out onto the reef, but what's going to keep them from meeting the same fate that the corals before them have met, which is mortality because of all the stressors that I talked to you about before. So this is a bleached coral, something that happens often with ocean warming, so with global climate change, is these heat stress events will stress a coral out to the point that they actually eject the algae, the little dinoflagellates that live inside of their tissues, and so they turn white. This coral is not actually dead yet. It just doesn't have the algae living in its tissues, but it will die if it's not able to regain that symbiosis in a few weeks to months because it'll basically starve. It doesn't have the resources it needs to grow. So we have developed a strategy called stress hardening, or maybe you can think of it as preconditioning. It's kind of like a vaccine for humans. So we'll take coral fragments into the lab, actually expose them to sublethal levels of heat stress, and then bring the temperature back down and keep them in a controlled laboratory setting while supplying them with more heat-tolerant algae. The symbionts that live in their tissues are actually really diverse. There's lots of different types of them, and some are more heat-tolerant than others. So by bringing them into the lab, bleaching them mildly, and then allowing them to recover with a more heat-tolerant symbiont type, they will actually avoid bleaching in the future. So we're working on sort of scaling up this approach with lots of different species, and also trying to put the fragments that we have stress hardened out into the wild so that they are able to sort of supply the reef with stronger, more resilient corals. The corals themselves can actually also tell us something when we give them a mild dose of bleaching. So different genotypes different coral individuals basically, will react differently to heat stress. Some actually won't bleach at all due to the coral's genes rather than the algae. And so those are the ones that we choose to prioritize for restoration purposes because we can then propagate them and outplant them and help put genotypes out there on the reef that are not going to bleach at all because they have a certain genetic suite of things that keep them more tolerant. Finally, we also work with the early life stages of corals. So corals can reproduce sexually. Once or twice a year, they have spawning events. at night. So this is a coral releasing its egg and sperm bundles, gamete bundles. And then we basically go out and collect these coral gametes, fertilize them, and raise baby corals in order to try to make sure that we can boost success for the next generation as well. So on the top left there, you see little recently settled baby corals. They're probably a week old after a spawning event. They start as a single polyp that settles onto a hard substrate like that ceramic plug there. After about a month, they start to acquire their symbiotic algae, which you can see in the bottom left there. And they also develop mouths and tentacles and start to look a little more like a coral. And then over time, they grow and bud off and form small colonies. So some of our research is focused on trying to increase the survivorship of these early life stages because they're the things that really create new genetic diversity. Even if we're planting out lots of coral fragments in the coral gardening approach, that doesn't create new genetic diversity, and that's part of what creates resilient populations. So we want to make sure that we maximize the success of both asexual and sexual propagation for corals. So we have some really exciting upcoming work as in both of our labs. Some of that includes really trying to scale up a lot of this gardening effort. We're building many tanks, seawater tanks on land to be able to house hundreds, hopefully thousands of these fragments as we propagate them and grow them out before they're outplanted. And we're also building new nurseries offshore to be able to host this. So we're really hoping to scale up our gardening efforts, particularly for the massive species, the boulder corals, the brain corals, because those efforts are a little, lacking in the Caribbean. Historically, we've mostly focused on staghorn. So it's time that we focus our efforts on lots of different species as well. Next, we're focusing on applying this stress hardening approach that I was just describing to a lot of these fragments that we are going to be propagating and outplanting so that we make sure not only are we planning out numbers of these corals, but we're planning out colonies that are going to survive the next 10, 20 years of continued ocean warming. Finally, we are upscaling our efforts with juvenile corals. We're going to be starting to propagate these coral juveniles and raise them in water pools, which is what you see on the left here. That will allow our corals to get natural light, get lots of energy from the water around them to be able to feed on the plankton in the water and really maximize their growth. And then we're going to settle them onto these settling units that you see on the right, which are actually self-stabilizing so that within a few months we can outplant them to the reef and basically wedge those in anywhere in the reef, and those juveniles will become a part of that community. So we're hoping to outplant probably 100,000 baby corals over the next 3 years, which is a pretty lofty goal and the first time anything like that has been done in Florida. Next, we're also going to be working with managed relocation, which is transplanting corals from warmer areas to cooler areas. Corals in warmer areas presumably have already experienced some level of heat stress and probably have selected for individuals that have genes that are more tolerant to heat. And so we want to move those to areas that are cooler but expected to warm in the near future so that we can kind of anticipate the environmental change that's going to be happening there soon and inject some of that heat tolerance into populations that are going to see warming in the near future. Somebody also mentioned coral disease in their questions. So there has been a major coral disease outbreak in Florida that's now spreading throughout the Caribbean. And we're focusing on trying to figure out what is going on with that. We still haven't identified the pathogen here in Florida, unfortunately. So we're working on also prioritizing for our outplanting efforts, colonies that resisted the disease. So colonies that are still alive in certain areas where the disease was raging. Presumably they have some sort of resistance, and so we want to prioritize those individuals for our restoration pipeline and therefore outplant individuals that are going to be resistant to disease. And then finally, we're working on this really new and exciting approach to coral cryopreservation. So by freezing coral gametes, mainly coral sperm, at low temperatures, usually negative 196 degrees Celsius, which is the temperature of liquid nitrogen, we can actually keep live cells stored indefinitely. So we're hoping to apply this to coral spawning events and be able to freeze large quantities of coral sperm in order to preserve the diversity from each of those cells, basically keep that biodiversity alive, and then also to allow us to selectively breed colonies that are far apart from each other to hopefully encourage heat tolerance and breed for other traits that we think will help them adapt and evolve. And then finally, citizen scientists will be part of all of this. So we're hoping that over the next 3 years, 10% of all the corals that we outplant will be outplanted by citizen scientists. So it's really exciting to be able to keep education and outreach a piece of this work. And with that, I'm all done talking. Thanks so much for your attention. Finally, if you're interested in some of this work, both Rescue Reef and Coral Reef Futures have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and websites. So please feel free to check us out. And I look forward to answering any questions that any of you might have during the breakout rooms. Thanks so much for your attention.
Awesome, thanks, Liv. All right, so we are actually gonna go back to Emma right now. And Emma is going to show y'all our new scientific research dive pool. So Emma, take it away.
Thanks, Josh, and thanks, Liv, for that really awesome, comprehensive overview of kind of coral reef decline and what UM is kind of doing to solve those problems. I wanted to take a quick moment to kind of highlight the collaboration and the specialization of research that we have here at UM. So Liv was mentioning a lot of things about how different coral genotypes or different coral individuals respond differently to the same stressors. And so the corals that we actually saw in the Langdon lab come straight from the Learman Lab nursery, which means they were grown in the nursery. We know who their parents are, meaning we know what their genotype is, and we know kind of their genetic identity. And so our hope is that we can identify different genotypes of coral that kind of withstand these stressors better than others, just kind of naturally. And we suspect that that kind of comes from their physiology, so those tissue properties that I was mentioning before. But I just wanted to highlight that the corals that we saw earlier actually came from the Learman lab, and we hope to kind of inform those outplanting decisions with the results that we get in the Langdon lab. So again, there's a ton of collaboration between coral labs and between all kinds of labs here at UM. So on that note, I'm outside. I'm here at the Scientific Diving Training Facility. So I'm going to turn my camera around really quick. All right, so we're out here. This is our brand new scientific diving training facility, also called the Splash. This is a brand new facility. I'm super excited about this. We actually just opened this up this semester. So this was actually the first semester that any classes were being taught in here. Right now the pool is covered by a blue mat, so that's what you're seeing. Essentially, this pool is a safe space for our scientific diving course, for those students who are taking those courses to be able to practice their skills in kind of a contained, safe environment, right? So they do a lot of training in the water. Since we are so close to the water, they do a lot of dives kind of right in our backyard, which I'm going to show you in a couple minutes. But on a day-to-day, you know, when students are just kind of learning their skills, especially in the beginning, it's really nice to kind of have this controlled, safe area that students can work on their skills underwater. So the way this pool works is it's essentially 15 feet all the way across. I've heard that they are interested in getting different types of substrates in here and different racks that could maybe make part of the pool shorter than others for different kind of skill work. So yeah, so this is where the scientific diving course is being taught. This is also where, for the first time ever, we're teaching a free diving course, which is really cool. And I know Liv and maybe some other students are taking that class, so they can maybe answer some questions about that. But essentially, the scientific diving course is basically takes recreational divers and turns them into scientific divers. And the way that we do that is basically, like I said, just kind of working underwater to hone your skills underwater. So they're very focused on, obviously, safety. Safety is the #1 thing, making sure your gear is all sorted out and that you feel completely comfortable in your gear and your weight belt and all that stuff. And then on top of that, kind of task loading, right? So the idea is that as a scientific diver, you're not really going down to just check out the cool reef and, you know, check out the cool animals. I mean, obviously you do, but you're really there to collect data, right? And to collect good data. So the idea is that we get you super comfortable underwater with, you know, things being task loaded. So we get you in the water with a clipboard and different equipment so you can kind of understand how it feels to be underwater with these different tools. And then, you know, one of the really fun drills that they do is they will actually have you take your final exam underwater. And so you can check out their Facebook page. If you just Google UM Dive Office, you'll come across their Facebook and Instagram page. They have a lot of really cool videos of the different training and drills that they do. You'll also get a chance to see our students do their final exam underwater, which is really cool. I've noticed someone asked the question, does this further your scuba certification? The answer is that essentially you need to have your open water 30-foot recreational certification before you can join the class. And so what this class will give you is an authorization from the American Academy of Underwater Sciences that allows you to be a scientific with any institution, including NOAA, and stuff like that. So at this point, I'm just going to make sure you guys are getting a good shot of the pool. And at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Miss Maria Cardellano, who's going to talk to you guys about a really cool animal called a toadfish. And so I'm going to pass it over to Maria, and she's going to tell you some more about toadfish and the research that she does over there. Thanks.
Hi everyone, my name is Maria. I am a postdoctoral researcher here at the University of Miami Rosenstiel campus. I have been at UM for a long time. I actually started out as an undergraduate 10 years ago and got my undergraduate degree in marine science. Then I got my PhD at Rasmus, and now I'm a postdoc. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the lab that I've been working in for a while. So this is the Rasmus Toadfish Lab. You can check out our Instagram and Facebook when you guys have time. Our principal investigator is Dr. Danielle McDonald, who's shown right here on the right. And you can take a look at everyone in our lab. We have undergraduates who volunteer in our lab, all the way up to graduate students. We have PhD students, master students, and we have people in the MPS program who are both volunteering in our lab and working on projects, their own projects. So we have a lot of, a very diverse group of people who are working in our lab. Since I can't really show you guys around the lab today, you can take a look. Here are some pictures of us in our chemical lab, which looks very similar to what Emma showed earlier. And this is what our wet lab looked like. So this is where we keep our toadfish. We have a couple of different experimental setups that are shown here. And then in the bottom left is where we keep our toadfish. So this is the Gulf toadfish. I think they're one of the most beautiful fish in the sea. Some people disagree, but we think they're pretty cute in our lab. They are found in the Gulf of Mexico as well as along the south coast of Florida. So they're super abundant around Miami. If you're ever out snorkeling, you should definitely look for them. They're pretty good at camouflage. They're hidden kind of on the bottom in seagrass areas and in the sand. So you might spot them, but you're more likely to hear them. They get their name because they make sounds like a toad. So both the males and females will make a grunting sound that sounds like toads, and the males will make a boat whistle, which is their mating call. So they'll attract females to their nests, where the females will then lay their eggs, and it's actually the males that will guard and protect the eggs in their nest. So if you're ever out during March to May, which is their breeding season, you might hear them vocalizing. So definitely keep an ear out when you're out snorkeling down here. We use toadfish for a couple of different projects in our lab. In our lab, we mostly focus on physiology, toxicology, and behavior. And toadfish make a really great model organism. So one of the reasons why we use them is because there's tons of them around Miami. By taking a couple and using them for research, we're not hurting their populations or anything. They also, sorry about that, this computer. They're also caught as bycatch, so they're not needed as, they eat shrimp, so they're caught by shrimpers, and when they're not needed by the shrimpers, they give them to us, so we use them in our lab. As I mentioned, they use vocal communication, so they make a great organism to study communication. They also have some really interesting behaviors. They're very aggressive. As you can see in this bottom picture, they're mouth fighting, so super aggressive. They also have paternal care of offspring, and they're very tolerant to air exposure. They don't have any scales, so they can stay out of water for really long periods of time, which actually allows us to do surgeries on them for a couple of different types of experiments. They're also a very hardy fish. They can handle a lot of environmental stressors. So because they can handle living in the lab and handle a lot of stressors, we use them to study stress physiology in our lab. So I'm just going to go over a couple of the research topics that we go over in our lab. This is not an exhaustive list, and it's certainly not going to go into too much depth, but feel free to ask me more about any of these topics later on. The first thing that we study are the effects of oil spills on the vertebrate stress response. So we use toadfish as a model to study other organisms. So for example, after the 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill that happened in the Gulf of Mexico, a lot of researchers at the University of Miami got grants to study a lot of different aspects of how this oil spill affected different organisms. And there was one study at NOAA that found that dolphins that were exposed to the oil spill were not able to have a proper stress response. So if an organism gets stressed out, we release a hormone called cortisol, which allows us to survive a stressor. But they actually found that dolphins weren't properly able to have this response. And toadfish have this exact same impairment as dolphins do. And since you can't really study dolphins in a laboratory setting, they're way too big to keep in a tank, we can use toadfish as a model to study them instead of using dolphins. So we're working on a big experiment to look at how this impairment is occurring. So we take brain samples, we take kidney samples, and we can look at the exact mechanisms or the physiological mechanisms, figuring out what exactly went wrong. I didn't want to play a video of the toadfish whistle, and if somebody asked about that, I didn't want the video or the audio to be too off, but you can Google it. If you look up a toadfish boat whistle, there's a couple different recordings online. So definitely take an ear out for that. We also study serotonin physiology in our lab. So serotonin is a neurotransmitter. In humans, it's used to regulate our mood. So it's highly involved in anxiety and depression disorders. It's also involved in appetite and all sorts of, in blood pressure. It's involved with a lot of processes in humans. And the same goes for fish. So fish have the same serotonin system that humans do. And so our lab is really interested in how serotonin is regulated throughout fish. It can be involved in their aggression. So it's involved in their behavior. It's also involved in their ability to sense oxygen. So if a fish finds itself in an area of low oxygen, their serotonin is really, really important. So in our lab, we study how serotonin is regulated throughout the body through the serotonin transporter and different receptors.
Okay. I can't add anyone until I hit create. So I have to hit create first and then add. And I feel like it's going to be a problem because I don't know how like the professors and speakers and directors are going to get in.
Can you guys still hear me? Okay, perfect. So, so we study serotonin, so a lot of different how it's regulated throughout the body. And with regards to serotonin, we're also interested in pharmaceutical pollution. So a lot of the medicines that we take end up in the oceans, especially in coastal environments and lakes and streams. Yeah, you can actually detect of different pharmaceuticals
last time,
in the water. Emma, I can hear you.
Chelsea couldn't get in because it said can't join chat because not assigned to breakout room. So I feel like the directors and stuff aren't going to be able to join.
Hey, Emma, I can hear you.
Breakout rooms have begun unless they're already assigned.
Sorry about that, guys.
And I can assign them.
We study pharmaceutical pollution. Again, I mentioned that we study serotonin. So we're really interested in one of the pollutants which is an SSRI, so a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, such as Prozac, Lexapro, a lot of other types of antidepressants. So when we take these medications and we take them properly,
because I hit the breakout room button and it pops up and I like click one room.
So we don't take all of the medication. So some of it will end up in our pee, which then can't be filtered out by wastewater treatment plants. So some of the medications that we take properly will end up in our oceans and our lakes and streams, or people flush medications. They're also ending up that way. They can be in our waterways from agriculture. So there's a lot of ways that different pharmaceuticals are ending up in our oceans. So we're really interested in how pharmaceuticals are affecting fish, particularly SSRIs that target the serotonin system. So that's something else that we study in our lab. Like I mentioned, we can use toadfish as a model to study dolphins. We can also use them as a model to study human health. So what's really interesting about toadfish is they're very tolerant to high levels of ammonia. So just a quick example of this is that when humans have liver failure, we'll build up ammonia in our blood, and this can cause our brains to swell. As you can see here in this right human brain, it's a little bit more swollen in the center regions compared to the left brain. Now, toadfish brains have actually been through an MRI machine just like human brains, and their brains do not swell in response to high ammonia. So it's possible that we can use toadfish brains as a model or as a way to study which mechanisms that toadfish have that humans don't, maybe as a treatment eventually for liver failure and brain swelling as a response. So that's something that we're studying in our lab. Our PI, Dr. McDonald, cultures brain cells in our lab and is looking at the different mechanisms within these cells to tolerate ammonia. In our lab, we also study chemical communication. So if you guys ever see dogs sniffing each other's pee, they're smelling pheromones. The same thing goes for freshwater fish and for crustaceans. They actually release pheromones in their urine, just like dogs do. And these pheromones can contain information about the sex of the organism, their reproductive state, if they're an aggressive organism or not. And really nobody knows how marine fish are communicating with chemicals. And this is because they live in a very salty, dehydrating environment living in the ocean. So they don't have one of the ways they conserve water is they don't have very much pee to work with. So they don't pee very much. Their pee is very low quantities and very highly concentrated. So if they're not peeing as much as freshwater fish, they might not have had to evolve a different way to communicate chemically. So what I did for my PhD was look at their ability to communicate with chemicals across their gill. So that's kind of one of the first areas of study into marine fish and chemical communication. And then one of the last projects that we have going on in our lab is noise pollution. So as I mentioned, these guys vocalize. And a lot of studies have found that, or they have used toadfish to study noise pollution. And this is because sounds that pollute our environment really target the animals who use sound to communicate. So if a toadfish lives in an area of high boat traffic, it's actually been found that they make the vocalizations less than areas of low boat traffic. So if they can't communicate, if they can't hear each other because there's too much noise pollution from humans, this is a really important area of study. So we have a couple projects going on in our lab where we put underwater speakers and playback sounds to them. I'm interested if they rely on chemical communication when vocalizing isn't advantageous. And then you might have seen us in the media last year, we did an experiment looking at the effects of the Ultra Music Festival on the fish that we have at our hatchery and the underwater sound levels in Bear Cut. So we actually had toadfish over at the hatchery and measure their stress levels after the Ultra Music Festival and found that they were actually stressed by the noise pollution that came from the music festival. So that's something else that we have going on in our lab. You can check that out online. I'm sure there's plenty of articles still up. But as you can see, we have a lot going on in our lab that kind of all are all focused on our toadfish. They're a really great organism to work with. They have a lot of qualities that make them a great lab organism, and that's why we use them. So if anybody has any questions about all of these projects, we have a lot going on. Feel free to ask me, and definitely to check out our Facebook and Instagram, and I look forward to talking to you guys later. And I think I'm gonna pass it back to Emma, who's gonna be showing you some more things around campus.
All right, hello everybody. Can everyone see me and hear me? Let's see. Okay, Maria, I think you might have to stop sharing your screen.
Did it work?
There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about the minor technical issues we're having this morning. I think one of our admins had the mic on, so sorry about that, Maria. But yeah, sorry, this is the last time you're gonna be seeing me today. I'm still here on campus. I'm here to show you guys today a classroom. So I'm gonna turn my camera around really quickly. And so here we have our largest classroom on campus. This is in the building that we call the Marine Science Center. This classroom can hold about 35 students and holds our largest class, which for graduate students is generally GIS. So most, if not all, MPS students are required to take GIS. And if I'm not mistaken, most MS and PhD students take that class as well. So that's why it's one of our bigger classes. In terms of the graduate level classes, this is one of our bigger classrooms. Yeah, so GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems, which is a software that a lot of graduate students wind up using to map different things. So essentially, yeah, so this is one of our classrooms. Like I said, our graduate classes tend to be very small. Our biggest class is about 30 students, like I said. For undergraduate classes, that is not necessarily the case. So as an undergraduate student, you're taking pretty much all of your classes over at the main campus. They tend to be larger classes. So especially for things like intro to biology, intro to chemistry, those kind of foundational things that it's not just marine science students taking those classes, but also pre-med and all that kind of stuff. Those classes can be between 300 and 400 students. The way they combat that is essentially they will have a group of TAs that is assigned to that class to offer workshops at different times. So if you're an undergraduate and you're in one of those really big classes and you're kind of wanting some more one-on-one help, you can sign up for a workshop with a different TA that kind of fits your schedule, so you're able to kind of get that more intimate kind of one-on-one help instead of kind of being lost in this bigger class. So yeah, this is our graduate classroom. We have outlets, we have comfortable chairs, everything that you'll need for class. And so now I'm going to show you guys what's called the MPS Student Lounge. So this is actually one of 2 MPS student lounges. The reason they're just for MPS students is this. It's because MPS students are really only here for generally kind of a maximum of 2 to 3 years. Most students finish in about a year and a half. And so because of that, because you're out doing your internship and you're not here for that long, a lot of MPS students wind up not having an office. So this is kind of a space for MPS students to get together and work on homework. You have couches and desks and stuff. Everyone can kind of get together and work on homework assignments. Since MPS students are often taking a lot of the same classes, I always see groups of students in here, you know, working on projects and kind of homework assignments that they've all been assigned. We also have a TV if you want to put on the news or sports or stuff like that. We do have a fridge in here in our other MPS student lounge. There is a microwave and fridge and kind of little kitchenette area. We also have lockers if you want to kind of leave your stuff there for the day, you can do that as well. But this is kind of just one of 2 MPS student lounges where MPS students are welcome to come and kind of get together and work on homework since they generally don't have an office. So that's one of the MPS student lounges, and we've saved the best for last. So now I'm going to be showing you our beautiful Salt waterfront restaurant. So this is our commons and cafeteria. We basically have hot food behind. It's closed right now since our campus is closed. But essentially, you would be able to get hot food behind here. We have a lovely view of the ocean. This is all redone. So this actually all used to be mirrors out here, but now we have these beautiful windows. So you can see this nice, beautiful view of the ocean. And then we have this lovely patio out here. And so for my graduate students or for anyone over 21, we do have what we call Wet Lab, which is our marine science themed bar that we have on this campus. And oftentimes, you know, really quick. Let's see out here. So meal plans, I see someone asking about meal plans. The meal plan does not work here. It's a privately owned restaurant. So essentially just an independent restaurant that you can pay for your food. So here we have our lovely view of the bay. Quite windy out here. You can see we have the Walton Smith there. So the Walton Smith is the university's research vessel. This vessel usually does shorter research cruises. They usually go for about a week or 2. They also do Bahamas. It's a relatively small research vessel. It can hold 13 scientists and 6 members at a time. You guys are very lucky because the boat's not always here, so you guys are getting to see this. And so undergraduate and graduate students do have opportunities to go on cruises on that boat for sure. We have our little private beach down here, and so that beach is actually privately owned by the university. So it is not open to the public. I'm going to rotate my camera because it's quite windy out here. But essentially that private beach is not open to the public. So you need your ID card to get in, and you can come at any time. I come weekends all the time to kind of lay out, and you can snorkel and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we're very lucky. We have this beautiful view. Let me show you one more time. Quite windy. And so we have this lovely view out here. So thank you guys so much for joining me for the tour today. I'm glad you guys were kind of able to see our campus in person, even though you guys weren't able to be here. I'm going to now hand it over to Josh, who's going to split you guys up into the grad versus undergrad groups. And thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm going to be in the undergrad group, so I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks a bunch.
All right, thank you, Emma. All right, so right now we're trying to do some magic in the background. So hopefully in a couple minutes, y'all will be split up into undergrad and grad. Grad, most likely y'all will just literally stay right here. So you will not leave. However, the undergrad students, you will be asked to join the undergrad breakout room. And that will be led by Dr. Margie Alexiak, who is the Associate Dean for undergrad. So she will lead and answer any questions that you'll have on that side, whereas on the grad side, we'll sit with you all and answer any questions that you have and kind of run through, have a chance for some of the program directors to talk a little bit and some students to also talk a little bit about their background. I also wanted to let y'all know that obviously we are marine atmospheric science and then also geosciences. So what we're going to do is, or what you can do when you become a student is join some of these outreach opportunities. We've got things like Canes on Canes. We've got groups in our geosciences that are doing outreach as well, whether it's with volcanoes or earthquakes. We have students that go out into the community working with K through 12 schools, organizations, corporations, things like that. So there's lots and lots of opportunities to get out there as well. So with that, I am going to, we'll probably be on hold for a couple of minutes, 1 or 2 minutes, to be able to get y'all into your breakout rooms. So give us a couple minutes and stay right here and we'll split you up. Hey y'all, there are a few of y'all who don't have your names changed to grad or undergrad. We will not be assigning you at the beginning. So if you do not get into your undergrad room, once I kind of announce that, hey, everybody who is in undergrad should be in the undergrad room, please shoot me a message on chat and we'll make sure that you get put into that undergrad room. All right, so we should be at a point now where if you were an undergrad, you should be invited into the undergrad section. If you are not, Emma, I see you're still there, we're working on you. Gwen to undergrad, okay, we'll add you. You should be transferred over. So give us another 1 or 2 minutes and we'll get started on the grad side. And actually, let's start with this. Sean Kennelly, do you want to just say a little bit about your area and your section?
Sure.
And then we'll go from there.
Sure. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Sean Kennelly. I'm the manager of the Graduate Studies Office, and I work with all of the PhD students and the MS thesis students. So if you're interested in applying to one of those graduate programs with a thesis or dissertation component, you would be applying to the programs that are handled by my office. And so if you're looking for assistantships, financial aid, student employment, I'm the person you should talk to. Josh is going to tell you a little bit about how all of that works a little bit later. And I'll be monitoring the chat and we'll be getting back to you with any question or answers that you need for those kinds of questions. So welcome everybody, and we look forward to hearing about your interests.
All right, thanks, Sean. All right, so actually where I want to start is, because I know we've got some faculty who need to jump in and out really quick. So I'm going to start with Dr. Roland Romiser for Ocean Sciences and give him a couple minutes to kind of chat about his area. So yeah, Dr. Romiser.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yep, you're good.
Good morning, everybody. What you see behind me there is our satellite receiving station that belongs to the University of Miami. That's the place where I would like to be now, but of course I'm sitting at home. Beth, maybe you should turn your microphone off. Yeah, so I'm the program director for the graduate program in Ocean Sciences. And that's the main program of the Department of Ocean Sciences. We have currently about 16 PhD students. That's not so much, but it's still growing. It was started just a few years ago. Our program has 4 main track concentrations, which are called ocean dynamics, RC interactions and remote sensing, biogeochemistry, and biophysical interactions. So this covers a wide range of different specializations, all within the Ocean Sciences program. So we have some groups of students who have almost no interaction with each other because they are on the different tracks, but they all are in the Ocean Sciences program. And we also have a bunch of different facilities and instruments where unfortunately nobody can be on the campus. Otherwise you would probably get a tour of our amazing wind wave tank facility, Sustain, where people do experiments with a wave maker and a wind generator. They can simulate hurricanes and that kind of thing. That's a unique facility that we have, and that's used by people in our department, including the students. We also have the satellite receiving station. That's my background picture there, where we have connections to many remote sensing satellites that fly around the Earth and take images of it. And we can access all those satellites and downlink the data. And we have a bunch of PhD students working with the satellite data. We also have large buoys and other instruments that can be deployed from ships for field experiments. We have several chemistry laboratories where people, I'm not so much a specialist for that, but they do interesting chemistry analyses there. They also do experiments where they take some water samples and, to analyze them in different ways. And there are 2 new assistant professors who started just a few years ago, who are very ambitious and who have built up new laboratories there, state-of-the-art equipment and a bunch of very talented and ambitious students. So there's a lot going on in the chemistry department there. And finally, we have the biophysical interactions group. That's mostly our Professor Claire Paris. Her group is doing experiments, for example, for fish larvae orientation. So they try to find out how the little fish larvae, after they are born, how they navigate in the ocean, how they find their directions, what's the right direction to go. And they do experiments in the ocean with some instrumentation where they can expose them to magnetic fields and to light and to all kinds of things that might be used for navigation. And they do similar experiments in the laboratory. Yeah, and I think that's the typical stuff I usually say in these events. If there are questions, I will be happy to answer some questions about our program. Are the questions coming in the chat, or?
I think let's do this. Let's actually allow for students to send private messages to,
Yes.
To faculty. And so let's go with that route. But thank you so much, Dr. Romiser.
Yeah, so I have to leave this event here in a few minutes because I have a different Zoom event to teach my class. So I don't know how long I can watch messages here that people send to me, but you can also find my email address on our webpage and send me regular emails. I'm watching my emails and I'm replying usually very quickly. So that's how we can do it. Okay, thank you for coming. I hope to see many new students and many applications for next year.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so really quick, I want to introduce Dr. Evan D'Alessandro. He's the director of MPS. I'm gonna let him talk for a second on MPS.
Hi, everybody. Thanks everyone for coming to this. You may or may not know that the University of Miami offers a Master's of Professional Science degree, which is an accelerated master's program. Usually takes most people about a year and a half to get through. Josh, do you want me to get into the difference between Master's of Professional Science and MS at all?
You can go for it, talk.
Okay. The biggest question we get about this program is what's the difference between a regular Master's of Science and an MPS? And the difference really lies, well, number one, in where the bill goes for your tuition, but really the biggest difference is how a student is admitted. And this is really why we started the MPS program at the University of Miami. When you apply for a PhD or a regular MS, the two biggest factors that go into your acceptance are, number one, does a professor match with you and want you in their lab? And number two, does that professor have grant-funded money to support you both as with a stipend and your tuition? So financially, your acceptance is very weighted. And it really doesn't matter how good your scores are if that money or that funding isn't there to support you as a student. Everybody knows that, politically, we haven't had a great science funding environment in the last, probably last 1 to 2 terms of presidency we've had in the United States. And so there haven't been a lot of opportunities for PhDs and MSs, at least not as many as we've traditionally had in the past. So we made this degree where we can keep the door open. We base, in the MPS, we base your acceptance solely on your academic merit, your GREs, your GPA, your letters of recommendation. And you can come to the university. There's plenty of spots open for everyone, basically. The one downside to this is that the tuition bill does go to the student, but it creates all these opportunities for people to still get a great graduate education and move on into the fields that, that the industry is going to need. So I think that is the biggest difference between an MS and an MPS. And we have a great group of alumni built up. We've been in existence now for a decade at the University of Miami, and we've got MPS alums in pretty much every facet of government and private sector science that you can think of. So we're really good at placing people in fantastic internships and helping people move forward with their careers. So I guess, Josh, should I turn it back over to you? And if any students have any specific questions, they can certainly send those to me in the chat.
Perfect, sounds good. And actually next we're gonna go to Dr. Catherine Mock and have her talk a little bit about her areas. Maybe. All right, actually, we will go over, we'll actually do a student rep really quick. Alex Norelli, do you want to talk a little bit about your areas?
Sure. So
Hi guys, I'm an MES PhD student right now, so Marine Ecosystems and Society, but I also completed my MPS 2 years ago. So I can answer questions about those as well in the chat if you have any. But I study tropical tuna migrations in the Atlantic. And so that means that I get to work on an international scale. So I work with an organization called the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tuna. And basically, I'm developing models that look at the movement of tuna in the Atlantic and helping inform management through that organization. So it is a very cool process, and I wouldn't be here without my MPS because I did the MPS. That really gave me a good like applied background, and then I was able to get my foot in the door with a professor here, and that's how I ended up staying for the PhD. So I think they're both really valuable experiences, and if you have any questions for me, I'll be in the chat.
And Josh, I do have my sound working now. Apologies, I got hung up on a double mute function. I only unmuted one of them.
All good, go for it, take it.
Great, okay, so I am grad program director in the Department of Marine Ecosystems and Society, and in some ways Alex was the perfect bridge from Evan to me, in that she's really traversed this trajectory through the two different programs. Our department is really focused on the ways that all of the natural science happening at Rosenstiel connect with society. A whole bunch of topics are relevant to the department. We're a home for climate change research, both risks and responses, fisheries, as Alex described, aquaculture, cultural archaeology, looking at shipwrecks underwater. And the core aspect of what research is like for graduate students in our department is that to connect the natural science at Rosenstiel to society and to policy, first of all, we're the home for environmental social sciences at the school. Second, we are very much about interdisciplinary research and rigorous interdisciplinary research. So grad students coming through our department learn why you need to connect disciplines to make science relevant to science and policy. They also learn how to do it well using cutting edge methods, often drawing from applied decision and policy analysis in the research process. And finally, we're really about decision relevance. We're not just doing science and research for academic communities alone. We're engaged scholars. That often means that students from the very start of their dissertations are working with people who in the space of conservation or in the space of fisheries or climate change are practitioners on a daily basis in government or in NGOs or the private sector. And those types of interactions ranging from communication to co-production of research are really infused throughout all of the research coming through our department. I know there are many of you on this call, and I just want to make sure I emphasize that I would be very happy to follow up with any of you by email. I know Sean and Josh are accumulating your questions, so please be in touch.
Thank you, Dr. Mock. All right, next we are going to go to Dr. Beth Babcock to talk about marine biology and ecology.
Hi, everybody. I'm the director of the MBE graduate program. So MBE is like MES and OCE, it's very interdisciplinary. There are people doing a wide range of projects. We have everything from people doing biomedical research using marine organisms as models, things like sea slugs and toadfishes, doing a lot of lab work, to people who do field ecology, people who are out studying reef fish ecology on coral reefs. And of course, we also have a big program on corals, everything from coral immunology to genetics, a lot of different work, including ecology, and also restoration of corals. We have a big program on that. So we have, every year we accept maybe 6 PhD students. And we also have a growing MS program. So if you're interested in the MS, that's definitely an option. Quite a few of the labs are interested in accepting MS students to work on these various projects. So I will be around if you have any specific questions, and feel free to follow up with me by email if you can't get your question answered in this format.
Thank you, Dr. Babcock. And I think with that, I'm actually going to transition to Amanda DiLiberto, who is a student in MBE as well.
All right, hi guys. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. So yeah, I'm a student in MBE. I'm a second year student, so I'm just finishing up my second year as a PhD student. So I actually work in the Marine Genomics Lab with Doug Crawford and Margie Lexiak, basically studying fish evolutionary biology. So I'm kind of interested in how traits are evolving based upon temperature stress. And I basically came to Erasmus because I was really interested in not only their research, but the community here and all the opportunities available at Erasmus. Yeah. I don't know if you want me to talk about anything else.
Nope, that is great. That works. Let's see. So actually now we're gonna move to the atmospheric science side of the house. And so I'm gonna have Dr. Sharon Majumdar actually talk a little bit about atmospheric sciences.
Greetings, everyone. Thanks, Josh and Sean, for putting this on. And good to meet you all online. My name is Sharon Majumdar. I was the Atmospheric Sciences Graduate Program Director, and then was the Associate Dean for Graduate Studies for the PhD and MS programs. I'll just say a couple of words about the PhD programs, which pertains to all of the different programs here. That they're 5-year PhD research assistantships, and that's essentially guaranteed with tuition, stipend, and health insurance all covered. And that's only just subject to academic performance. So it's a fairly different type of structure to many universities where the assistantship is kind of based on so which labs happen to have funding at the time. So with us sort of across Erasmus, that we provide assistantships with guaranteed funding for 5 years. So now I'll switch into the what our department does. So we have 11 faculty in atmospheric sciences. We really cover the fields of atmospheric dynamics, physics, and chemistry. We have research from smaller scales, that is thunderstorms, clouds, like the one in the not real picture behind me, but that's a picture from Erasmus. And then we do a lot on hurricanes, and we have actually 3 PhD assistantships in hurricanes for fall or spring or fall 2021. So we do a lot on hurricanes, the dynamics and physics, intensification processes, predictability, formation, a lot of different aspects of hurricanes we do. Then we also have a lot of research in atmospheric chemistry. That involves sort of aerosols, connections with climate, biomass burning, a lot on cloud physics. And then also a lot of research on climate as well, the larger scale. So more the physical processes of climate change, for example, is a very large area of research. And go to our website in atmospheric sciences, and you'll see a whole range of other research topics. So with that, I think I'll conclude and be happy to take any questions on the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Majumdar. I think now we're going to transfer over to a student in ATM, Mary Beth.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mary Beth Arcodia. I'm a 4th-year PhD student in the Atmospheric Science Department, and I study climate variability. And so I use observations and also modeling, and I specifically look at how a variety of storm systems and oscillations out in the Indian and Pacific Oceans can affect weather in the United States, generally on a 2-week to 2-month time scale. Erasmus really drew me in right away, and mostly because of everything that you've heard so far. There's such diversity at Erasmus, especially in all the different research areas. And so that brings in such a wide range of people. And the community at Erasmus is really something I've never found anywhere else. And it made it a really easy choice for me to come here. I'm also involved in a few of the outreach groups that we have at Rasmus, including Canes on Canes, which Josh mentioned earlier, which is our hurricane outreach group, and also our climate outreach group. And so we either give talks to people who are visiting Rasmus, student groups or community groups, or we go out to schools and we go for all ages, you know, anything from elementary all the way up to colleges to local community groups. And so if anyone has questions about that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mary Beth. All right, and we're actually going to transfer to another student, Matthew Grossi, for ATM.
You want me to talk about ATM or MPO, Josh?
Actually, either. MPO's fine too.
Okay. I haven't heard anything said about MPO yet, so you want me to give an introduction, or is there a professor who will do that?
I've got a professor too. So actually just talk a little bit about your research and then actually we'll transfer right over into that.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm Matt Grossi. I'm a fourth year student in meteorology and physical oceanography, which is what MPO stands for. And I'm told somebody will give a breakdown about that shortly after me. My research involves looking at how we can apply machine learning to ocean prediction and kind of data exploration. The project that I came in kind of on the tail end of was about a 10-year funded project looking at the physics of the Gulf of Mexico, kind of in the wake of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. And we were interested in getting a better understanding for surface and subsurface dynamics, because we didn't really have a good understanding of that, even though it's sort of right in our backyard. So I'm kind of doing this largely pioneering work in that regard, and it's very exciting, very interesting, and I'm a great advisor. What drew me to Rasmus was really this particular meteorology and physical oceanography program, where it's sort of a joint degree type thing, where we take classes in both disciplines. My interest is really in both ocean science and atmospheric science, so I really liked the ability to take classes in both and have them count toward a degree, and that's sort of somewhat of a rarity now. I think it's becoming more common, but it's certainly been a flagship program for Rasmus for many years, and they continue to have it, and I'm glad they do, and I'm glad that I'm able to be here and be a part of it.
Awesome, thank you so much. And with that, we're actually going to transfer over to our program director for MPO, Dr. Mo Iskandarani.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mohammed Iskandarani. I'm the director of the Meteorology and Physical Oceanography program. This is a joint program that is administered by the Ocean Science and the Atmospheric program, departments, I meant. So administratively, you belong to a department, and from a pedagogical point of view, you belong to a program. And so in MPO, you would be fulfilling the MPO program requirements. They're slightly different than the ATM and OCE programs. The shared courses are really geophysical fluid dynamics courses. Essentially, when the program was started, the idea was that both are governed by the same set of equations, and there's benefit from approaching them from a common point of view. And it turned out to be a pre-science idea, because essentially if you're doing climates, you have to deal with both the ocean and atmosphere. And even though you might be focused on only one of the system, not both of them at the same time, it's good to know something about the other system. So the MPO program requires its students to essentially take one extra course that focuses on the ocean and the atmosphere. And you do that in your first semester. It has 30 credit hours, so it's about 10 courses. That's the requirement for a PhD, and the core courses are 5 essentially, and then you can choose any other 5 courses you want. The research in the MPO program cover the spectrum of ocean, atmosphere, and air-sea interactions, from the small-scale geophysical turbulence to modeling and observations. That's a huge component as well. A lot of people joining the program are those who sort of want to cover both systems. One thing that I would like to draw your attention to is the emerging program in data science. Atmosphere and ocean modelers have been dealing with big data for a long, long time, especially when it comes to analyzing observations. But we are starting a more formal program that taps into the advances that have been going on in large data analytics. And so we're trying to sort of see if we can capitalize on what has been going on in these fields to enrich ours. If you have any questions, let me know. Email is probably best, but I'll monitor the chat group for a little while longer.
Awesome, thank you so much. And with that, I want to transfer to another student rep, Manesh, who can talk a little bit more about MPO as well.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Hi, I'm Manish. I'm also a PhD student in MPO. I do kind of observational oceanography. I work with these kind of large-scale currents in near the Arctic and Iceland. So my work involves actually going out to sea. We were actually supposed to be out at sea now. That obviously got canceled, which is kind of a bummer, but we'll be going up to Iceland again, and we leave sensors in the ocean and collect the data and analyze that in kind of like a climate sense, like how do these currents work and what are the physics of them and how do they interact with the larger system. I chose Miami in a large part just because when I came here to visit, it felt like kind of a very different community to most PhD programs. Like everyone seemed to get along, and there was just like a generally awesome vibe around with everyone. And since I've been here, it's definitely kind of panned out that way. I get to like have friends in all sorts of programs and get to be involved in like different groups, like climate group, where I get to hear discussions and presentations from all sorts of students doing research across the board. Yeah, it's a quick bit about me. I don't know if there's anything else I need to cover.
That is great. And if y'all have questions for any of these people, please make sure that y'all are sending some private messages over to them, because they are there to help answer anything that y'all have. And I think the last one I have is our last program director for our marine geosciences, Dr. Ali Pourmand.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whatever part of the planet that you plug it in. I hope everybody's doing well at these very, very strange times. I'm Ali Pourmand, the program director of the Marine Geosciences. And back here, if you can see, I'm obviously not in the lab, but like many others here, I would have been happy to be in there. The monstrosity you see in the middle is an inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometer. It's a very delicate instrument that measures isotope ratios. So we use this instrument for a lot of geochemical analyses. But before I focus too much on what I do and sort of represent myself, it's my duty to represent our department. So Josh, if I can quickly share a little, let me see. How do I access my a file and share it on my computer? This is always a little bit of a challenge. So if you allow me to just quickly do this because I wanted to show you what the overall structure of our department looks like. Okay. All right, let me see if I can do this. All right. Yes. Okay. Can everybody see this, I hope? All right. So what I'm showing you is basically the Department of Marine Geosciences. We are comprised of effectively 4 different branches of geophysics, oceanography, geochemistry, and sedimentology. And there are different faculty. Obviously, the backbone of every department or any entity are the people who work in it. And so we have a wonderful, tightly knit community with a variety of interests and sort of flavors in general. And in specifically. So as you can see, the general component of it overlaps also with others. And in that sense, we actually share a lot with our neighbors in the department and with the outer school, wherever any questions we're trying to address emerges that we think other expertise. So in other words, we're very much interdisciplinary. So in geophysics, we study Dr. Lin, Dr. Amelung, Adam Holt recently joined, and we have Professor Emeritus Dr. Harrison. We're more interested in sort of how the physics of the Earth, earthquakes, tectonics, looking at satellite imagery, looking at Earth deformation, crustal surfaces. Dr. Amelung recently published a paper on looking at infiltrometry, looking at satellite image analysis of volcanoes, and with one of his postdocs, and they decided ultimately that in a paper that's published in Nature that they basically relate some volcanic activities or increased volcanic activities to rainfall, increased rainfall. In oceanography, we have all kinds of research going on, anywhere from sort of coastal environment all the way to the deep ocean, looking at boreholes, and also looking at climate-related sea level change, the impact on community and society. That also overlaps a little bit with geochemistry. As you can see, we delve into climate-related issues all the way, I'd like to say, from the benthos to the cosmos. We'd like to peek our head into and ask questions about it. Now, sedimentology, obviously, we have one of the world-renowned, if you haven't heard, I'll tell you about it, the CSL, Carbonate Sedimentology Laboratory, that is sort of a beacon of the industry as well, training students for the industry as well as academia. A lot of oil companies sort of look at our CSL, their publications and their research in terms of understanding a new direction where research frontiers are going. And so if you come to our department, you'll have access to some of the cutting edge research that is being done, that is being paid attention to not just by academia, but also by the industry. And so outside of here, we reach out to different departments at school and outside. There's a lot of collaborations going on with MPS as well as the ocean sciences, atmospheric sciences. We love to steal students from the MPS program to our MS and PhD program, but also to work with them to train for whatever need they may have. If there's no funding available at the moment and you're prepared to fund yourself, if you're excited enough about a project and have the means, we are here to basically provide. And so the last thing I wanted to say is basically about our facilities, and what we have is sort of a shared common denominator across the campus. If you have needs in the to measure some toxins in a fish, here is our facility, and you can come to, and we'll be happy to help you do what you need to do, as well as train our own students. So once again, the mass spec you see in the back, we've measured everything from, honestly, heroin, geochemical fingerprinting, to meteorites from Mars, all the way to cave deposits, corals, to climate change related questions, all the way to societal impact. So there's a lot that you can go after if you have the right question, if you have the right community to help you. And here in the Marine Geosciences, we're here to extend both our expertise and as well as the warmth of our community to anyone who's curious to learn about Earth-related or cosmos-related questions. And so if you have anything you want to talk about, I'm happy to get back to you through email or any other means you find me accessible. I'm happy to be available. Thank you very much, Josh. If there's anything, I'm here for a couple more minutes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, so I think I've got all the faculty and students. So what I was going to do is I'm going to run through a super quick presentation that will kind of talk a little bit about the opportunities in PhD and over in MPS. And then we'll stay around for any questions that you have, and we'll go from there. So let's see. All right, can y'all see this? I'm hoping it's a yes. Perfect, thank you. All right, so PhD assistantships. So one of the things we like to talk about are the different opportunities that we have in this. Now we are closed for fall 2020 for PhD and MS currently. Those applications have been closed. PhD students, we will be opening those opportunities probably around September or so for fall 2021. And we'll be opening those for spring. I'm not 100% sure. Sean might be able to better answer that. But we will actually be listing all of those coming up next week. We'll be making some changes to our assistantship page on the website. So definitely keep an eye out on that. Like it says here, PhD assistantships are fully funded, typically around 5 years. The annual salary is approximately $30,312. That was for last year. It will change coming up for 2021. So as we get those numbers, we'll make sure that we update everybody as well. It also does include your tuition and insurance. So you're not having to pay that out of that $30,312. Like it says, applications are due by January 1st, 2021. I always encourage people to turn those in by December 1st. It gives faculty a little bit more time to be able to look through those applications. I always like to encourage students to reach out to faculty members early as well to make sure to see if they've got any opportunities. And just to maybe get some of the questions answered even before some of those opportunities may be listed. So I'm just gonna run through a handful of the opportunities that we've had this past year. So these have all been filled, but just to kind of give students an idea of the type of opportunities that we've had for fall 2020. So this is one with Dr. Brian Soden, who is our acting Associate Dean for Graduate Academics, focused on climate change, cloud circulation. And I'm gonna run through these because, like I said, they're already passed, so I'm just kind of running through them. Dr. Danielle McDonald on Toadfish. Obviously you heard from Maria earlier, so this is an area that we're looking for. Dr. Cassandra Gaston, one of our newer faculty members and doing impact of harmful algal blooms. Impact of aerosols on oceans and rainforests with Dr. Cassandra Gaston again. This is one where we actually have a field site over in the Barbados, and so they're collecting information from that field site. Evolutionary genomics with Dr. Alexiak and Dr. Crawford. Dr. Alexiak is actually our undergraduate associate dean. She's actually in the other chat right now talking with the undergraduate students. So if you have some questions, you can email her as well. Surface expressions with Dr. Adam Holt. He's got a couple of opportunities that were listed this past year, so definitely keep an eye out for that come spring and fall as well. Here's one with Dr. Babcock and Dr. DA. That was for this past fall, Living Marine Resources Cooperative Science Center. Subduction zones, another one with Dr. Adam Holt. Interactions of oceanic currents with Igor Kaminkovich. And he's actually over in the undergrad area as well right now, as he is one of the advisors for the undergrads. We've got climate change risk and preparedness with Dr. Catherine Mock, who was in here earlier. Multi-scale interactions and predictability with Dr. Sharon Majumdar and Dr. Dave Nolan. Dr. Sharon Majumdar was in here earlier, and like he said, he was an associate dean for 3 years prior as well. He's a great person to work with as well. He's gonna have a handful in here. Here's another one that's with Dr. Majumdar, and this is kind of one of the nice areas I like to talk about the relationship that we have with NOAA. You also see that we have somebody else on here who is working with NOAA. And so we actually have NOAA, the fisheries and meteorological side literally across the street from us. It's a stoplight. You can take the walkway across the street. It's really, really cool. Even some of the NOAA people are on our listservs. And so it's really neat to have that relationship with a government organization right across the street from us. We do a lot of work, obviously, with them. We have talks with them on our campus, seminars, things like that. Another one with Dr. Majumdar, another one with NOAA. ocean prediction and exploration using machine language with Tamai. This is a really kind of cool one as it relates to currents and working with MIT, Duke, UCLA with environmental problems like oil spills, pollution, spread of red tides, etc. We've got trade winds with Paquita. And here's been a really big one for especially the Miami area, the sargassum research. This is another one that's obviously in collaboration with NOAA, especially over the last couple of years. The seaweed has been very bad, as you can kind of see in that top left corner right there. And especially when it comes to tourism dollars, things like that. The last thing that you want is to have your beaches kind of looking like that. So there's going to be a lot of cool research that's going to be done between NOAA and the University of Miami on these kinds of things. And like you saw earlier with Emma, there's going to be work with that wave tank as well. All right, so I'm going to play this video. I don't know if it's going to let me work though. So actually, let me try to stop sharing and go back to share. And let me see if I do this and this. All right, now let's see if this is, I'm gonna try to play a quick video. I don't know if it's gonna work. We'll see. So let's go ahead and play it.
Arthur C. Clarke, writer of Stanley Kubrick's famous film, 2001: A Space Odyssey, famously pointed out how inappropriate to call this planet Earth when it is clearly ocean. As the human population continues to grow, we're stressing our blue planet and its resources in unprecedented ways. And if we're not careful, we could kinda screw it all up. At the University of Miami's Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Science, an innovative graduate program provides students the opportunity to make a difference. The Master of Professional Science program offers 14 tracks, all designed for people that want to stop talking about problems and get to solving them. The tracks include applied remote sensing, aquaculture, broadcast meteorology, climate and society, coastal zone management, exploration science, fisheries management and conservation, marine conservation, marine mammal science, natural hazards and catastrophes, tropical marine ecosystem management, underwater archaeology, and weather forecasting. In conjunction with the University of Miami School of Law, the JD MPS track is also offered, allowing students to focus their studies in the Department of Marine Ecosystems and Society, saving 12 credits over earning the degrees separately. You'll earn your degree in 15 to 18 months, spending most of that time on Rasmus's famous Virginia Key campus, located minutes from downtown Miami along Biscayne Bay. The MPS program experience consists of two components, coursework and internship. Course study is designed to build the foundational knowledge required for a profession in that track's subject matter and can include on-site study in locations like Panama, Mexico, the Galapagos, the Florida Keys, Bonaire, China, and Chile. Because life happens mostly outside of a classroom, the second phase brings students into a real-world job experience through an internship. Internship opportunities are available in various federal agencies, NGOs, and the private sector, with organizations such as the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the National Park Service, and the Nature Conservancy, to name a few. The goal of the internship is to provide students professional experience, networking opportunities, and a head start in securing job placement upon graduation. Most graduates secure employment within 6 months of graduation, while some use the experience as a pathway to doctoral, law, and veterinary degree programs. For more information about the Rasmus MPS program at the University of Miami, including application deadlines and alumni spotlights, visit mps.rasmus.miami.edu.
All right, so back to the PowerPoint. I'm going to be able to run through this quick because that video kind of said everything. Students can enroll full-time, part-time. Many students, like Evan said, finish in about 15 to 18 months. It's a very, very quick and accelerated program. In general, most students come in the fall. They'll take 12 to 15 hours in the fall. Spring, take another 12 to 15 hours, and then they go into their internship or job portion that summer into the next fall, and most people will graduate in that next fall. Like it said in the video, we've got 14 different tracks. The one that I kind of want to hit on really quick, the JD MPS, the only way you can actually go into that track is if you have already been in the JD program and accepted into the JD program and you've been in it for 1 year. So don't worry about that one. However, if you are interested in it, let me know, shoot me an email or a text, and we can kind of chat a little bit more about it. But obviously we've got everything from applied remote sensing, aquaculture, all the way down to underwater archaeology, weather forecasting, and kind of everything else in between. So yeah, let's keep going. The internship, that's the biggest difference between that MS and the MPS. Obviously the MS, you're gonna be working one-on-one with a faculty member and doing a lot of the research in that area that that faculty is working in, whereas the MPS, you're gonna be out in the field working with organizations like NOAA, the National Park Service, for example. The real purpose is to be able to get that hands-on real world experience. And so whenever you're going out and you're applying for a job, those two big things are, all right, do you have the graduate degree? All right, you check it off. And how many years of experience? So this is one of those opportunities that gives you that opportunity to be able to get those years of experience when it comes to the Master of Professional Science. Choosing an internship, we send out stuff every single day. You know, I'm sending out probably between 5 and 10 different opportunities daily, whether they are full-time jobs, whether they're internships, etc. And so what we do with that is we literally send it out through our MPS listserv. We also do in the spring semester set up what we call brown bag lunches. Kendra Velez, who's been answering a bunch of the questions in the chat, thank you, Kendra, sets those up with your faculty. And so you actually get to sit around with your faculty and kind of talk about what are those different opportunities that are available that may not even be listed. I would say about 50% of our students are getting their internships via like the listservs and everything, and about 50% are getting them through networking opportunities and just through faculty and through other people. One of the big things that I love to mention is, you know, where Emma was at the end was in the wet lab. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the wet labs are available, and Friday nights are a great opportunity to be able to do some networking. You've got people from NOAA coming across the street. Some of your faculty are in there. And sometimes it's just a great chance to be able to chat one-on-one with people and to be able to just network. Also on Fridays, a lot of classes are not held on Fridays. Most classes are Monday through Thursday. There are a couple that are held on Fridays, but that gives you an opportunity to join some of our seminars as well that we are offering. And those seminars are another great opportunity to be able to network with other students, with faculty, with these different people who are doing research out in the field. So definitely great opportunities to be able to look at different opportunities when it comes to those internships. Some other facts, since we are in this crazy COVID kind of state right now, I like to talk about the merit-based waivers. That is one of the biggest things is we know that people can't take the GRE right now, or if they do, it's an online session. And so we're trying to be a little more open to the different opportunities. And so we do have 2 different options to be able to get that 20% tuition waiver. The first one is our regular one, where you get 3 credits if you score a 297 on the GRE, where you're adding up your verbal and quantitative, and have at least a 3.0. And then you can have an opportunity to get 6 credit waivers, which is at 20% if you score a 308 on the GRE and you have a GPA of at least a 3.3. The second option is based on GPA alone. And so if you have a GPA of at least a 3.3 or higher, you'll get that 10% waiver or the 3 credits. And then you've also got the opportunity to get the 6 credit waiver or 20% if you have a GPA of a 3.6 or higher. Now, if you were looking and you were like, man, I've got a 3.4 GPA, but I haven't taken the GRE yet, and you're interested in getting that extra 10% or 3-hour credit waiver, go take the GRE. If you think that you're going to be able to score that 308, I highly, highly encourage you to be able to go and take that GRE to be able to get that score. We want to reward everybody for their hard work and dedication in getting those great scores. Like I said earlier, we also got the comprehensive internship report at the end. So when you're doing your internship, you actually will have a committee, 2 faculty members from Rosenstiel, and then a 3rd who is your internship or job supervisor. And so those 3 people make up your committee. You will need to write a report. You will need to defend it as well. It's not like a full out thesis. These are usually much smaller reports, but you know, we've had some that are 200 pages. We have some that are 40 to 50 pages. So it kind of depends on the student and the individual and kind of what direction they want to go. And like I had said earlier, our GRE minimum is usually a 297 and a 3.0 GPA. However, we are waiving that GRE for fall 2020 only. We'll be looking and seeing if that's something that we want to continue to do in the future, but currently right now, we are only planning to waive it for fall 2020, and that is only for the MPS. If you're looking for PhD and MS, the GRE is still going to be required. So if there are questions, you can email me, feel free to text me. If y'all want to chat one-on-one later, I'm absolutely available for that. If you want presentations, some of the digital magazines we have, videos, etc., just let me know and I can definitely send that out. I will be sending out this presentation later as well. So yeah, that's all I've really got. I'm going to kind of leave the chat open for any questions and things like that. I'll be here kind of answering them as they come through as well. And yeah, thank y'all all for coming today. And if you have anything else, just let us know. Thanks. Okay, I do see some good questions that I am going to answer as they come through. So yes, the MS and PhD apps are closed, but for fall 2020, the MPS is open through July, usually about mid-July for domestic students, June 1st for international students. And it is a rolling admission. So as soon as you are turning in those applications and we have everything from you, we pass those on to our track faculty, and those track faculty will go ahead and start reviewing those. We usually get acceptance or denial letters out within 2 weeks or so after we have the full application in. I see others that are asked about for MPS tracks that have maximum number of students. There are a handful of tracks that do have a max number of students. For example, our marine mammal science, we take between 6 and 8 students. So that is definitely an area where we kind of look at everything. Those go to our track faculty, Dr. Jill Richardson, and she kind of evaluates that as we go. There are some students who we put on a wait list if we are kind of in limbo where we are waiting for a student to say whether they are verifying to come or not. And then we might go ahead and offer a couple other opportunities to students based off of how those go. And that's just an example for marine mammal science. When you're actually applying, we do ask you to give us our top 2 tracks. So for example, in this one, some students might go marine mammal science and marine conservation. And I always encourage people to kind of look at what is going to be the best track options for you. The nice thing about the MPS degree is that it is very, very specific to you. And so there are probably 4 or 5 courses that are mandatory in each of these tracks. Some of them might have a little more, some of them might have a little less mandatory courses. But then it gives you an opportunity to kind of make that degree your own by allowing you the elective opportunities to be able to fulfill what it is that you want to do. If, for example, you don't get into marine mammal science, but you're interested in taking some of the marine mammal science courses, you can absolutely still do that as long as there's room in those classes. Deadline, I'm just scrolling. Currently, all areas for MPS are available as of right now. PhD programs are very, 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 very competitive. Sean, if you want to talk a little bit more on that, you can. I also like to add that if you are interested in the fall 2021 or even spring 2021 opportunities, if you are interested in possibly MPS, but you're really interested in the PhD, when you apply for PhD or MS, there is a box that you can check also for MPS. So that might be an option for students to be able to be reviewed by both of those. They are reviewed completely separately. So there's no kind of effect on whether you are getting into the PhD based off of if you're accepted into the MPS. Sean, you want to talk a little bit on that?
Yeah, I'll just mention we typically have about 20 funded projects for PhD for each year. And we've been getting about 200 to 300 applications for those each year. So as Josh mentioned, that's very, very competitive. What you can do is, as Josh mentioned, you can reach out to faculty in advance. You can give them your CV and express interest in working with them. As you can imagine, they get a lot of prospective students reaching out to them. So you may not get a response right away. You may not get a response for a while until they know whether or not they have funding, but you are certainly welcome to reach out to them, and we encourage you to do so. And I encourage you to, again, include your CV and what your interests are as you're communicating with them. And again, as Josh mentioned, we're going to be updating the website with the assistantships that are going to be available for 2021. We already know that there's going to be a number of projects available, so we're going to update that now. And then there's going to be a bigger update later in the fall as well. So be checking that website, that web page over the next couple of months leading up to the December 1st deadline.
Awesome, thank you, Sean. I see some questions about financial aid and some of that for MPS. And asking about TA and RA opportunities. So TA and RA opportunities go first and foremost to those PhD students. That's kind of where that starts first. If there are any opportunities and a faculty member is interested in bringing you on as a TA or RA, that's something that is between the GSO office and the faculty. So that's something that can be an option, but I don't like to say it happens very often. We do have students who do go over to main campus as well, and they do TA over there as options in the future as well. So that's definitely something. We do have students who bring in scholarships or grants, and then of course we do have students who apply for aid through FAFSA as well, through our financial aid office. And the internship always completed in the summer after the 2 semesters classes. The internship doesn't have to be completed during that timeline. That's just normally when it happens. I think, and Kendra, if you want to talk a little bit more on this, I think we do have, it's required that you have to take at least 12 to 15 hours or at least 1 semester of classes before you can actually start taking internship courses. Kendra, do you want to talk a little bit on that? Kendra, are you in there? Either way, I can chat on that later. I can find out the information and give it over to you. So that's definitely shoot me an email or text so we can figure that part out. Is there a possibility to transition from MPS to PhD? There's definitely opportunities. Does it happen often? I wouldn't say it happens very, very often. For example, a lot of them will finish their MPS degree and then go on to PhD. For example, Emma is a great one. Who started as an MPS student and then graduated as MPS, applied the next year, and was accepted to start this past fall. So I know that is definitely something that has happened even just this past year. I think we had like between 12 and 15 MPS students who graduated and started in fall 2020 in some kind of PhD. It doesn't have to be at UM. We do have a handful that started at UM as well, but we have students who are over in Australia doing PhDs. We have students in the Northeast doing this as well. I always like to stress that the MPS is there to help you get a job. That is the main priority for MPS, is to get you a job. However, there have been a lot more students who've been transitioning into PhDs after they complete that. Kendra, I see you're popped up now. You want to talk?
Hey, yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Kendra Velez. I am the Associate Director for the MPS program. So I work closely with Evan, whom you guys saw a little earlier, and Josh. And I've been answering some of your questions via text. Josh is correct in that typically MPS students start their internship during the summertime, but it's not necessarily always that case. We like to have students complete at least 12 credits worth of courses at the University of Miami. That way, Erasmus faculty and your advisor can vouch for you, so that we can go to your internship organization or your supervisor and say, yes, this person is competent and we approve of this person engaging in an internship so soon into their graduate program. Typically, students start their internships after their first
2 semesters in the MPS program. So if you start in August, most of our students will start their internships the following year during the summertime, but it's not exclusive. We just want to make sure that you know what you're doing, that you're going to represent the university well. That means your advisor has to approve, and the associate director, the senior director, Dr. Evan D'Alessandro, has to approve as well. Any other questions? Josh?
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I see a couple more out there. If accepted for fall 2020, can you be guaranteed for fall 2021 if you defer because of COVID? Absolutely. We're not going to be jerks about all this. We are kind of looking at everything. I mean, literally day to day, hour to hour basis on some of these things. As soon as we've got updates, we pass that on, and we highly encourage accepted students and even verified students to kind of keep up on the COVID pages for University of Miami to see where the updates are for everything. We completely understand kind of all these different circumstances. So yes, we would absolutely allow a deference to fall 2021 or even spring 2021 if that's something that you're interested in as well. Currently, some of the tracks we have don't allow for a start in spring 2021, but we're looking at changing some of that because of everything that's going on. All right.
Josh, can I chime in here?
Go for it.
If social distancing restrictions are lifted and we are able to have a regular fall session in person and you still elect to defer to the following year, that's fine. Just send us an email letting us know what your plans are if you want to join us this year or the following year. I will say for the students in the marine mammal science track, that is our most competitive track. Therefore, if you decide to defer, we encourage you the following year to let us know if you plan to return and actually start your graduate studies with us. We just want to give you seniority seating for that and let other students have a chance to have your seat if you don't want it anymore. So if you're in that situation where you're deferring and then life happens, you can no longer join us, please let us know via email early on. We'd love to give another person the opportunity to have that seat. But your seat is guaranteed. We just want to hear from you early because marine mammal science is our most competitive track. So we get the most requests, the most applications for that.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm seeing a couple other questions as we keep going. Our classes for upcoming semesters would be online classes or on-site. As of right now, and all I can say is right now, because obviously everything's changing, our first half of summer classes are all going to be online. In the next couple of weeks, we'll be reevaluating everything and we'll see if that changes for the second half of summer and then obviously going into fall. So we are all in wait mode at this point to try to see where we're going to be for that. I've also had some students ask if we are online for the fall semester, can they actually live where they're currently living away from Miami? And I would say if we are online for the fall semester, yeah, you could live anywhere. You don't have to be in Miami since all of that will be online. But don't make any quick decisions yet until we kind of see as we continue to go forward. I see another one that says if you have tuition waivers for the fall, will it be charged? Or will it be changed if the university goes back to the GRE track? No, if you've got those tuition waivers, you have those. We will not take those away. Even if you defer to the next fall, you will continue to have those waivers, even if we do bring that GRE back. Let's see.
Josh, did you already answer the one about applying to a PhD while you're in MPS?
So not applying. You can definitely apply to PhD while you're in MPS. However, what I would probably do personally is have those conversations with those faculty members because, you know, if you're not kind of guaranteed, I wouldn't just go throw money out there for those applications. I would go have those conversations with those faculty members. There may be a way that they say, okay, once you finish MPS, you can start a PhD with me. Great. But I would probably hold off and have those conversations with the faculty before you go any further with that. Oh, there you go. That was my next question. Sorry.
I see a question about 24 credits of courses. If somebody's allowed to take more, did you answer that? Sorry.
No, so you're literally one person ahead of me. All right. So for those 24 credits, the thing is, when it comes to the internship for MPS, the internship has, and I hope I don't make this confusing, y'all. The internship, you have to have at least 2 credits that go towards your internship. So can you take more courses after the 24? Yes. To be honest, I would highly encourage you to take up to 28 hours worth of courses. That way you're not paying for internship credits. Yes, there's a good opportunity that you may be being paid during that internship, and that could help cover those 6 credits by how you're getting paid, etc. However, I always encourage people get more of the education and put your money towards those credits rather than putting it towards the internship portion. Do you agree, Kendra?
Yes, I'd like to chime in and clarify as to why the MPS program makes you take 2 internship credits. Reason being is that on average, the MPS student will need 2 full semesters to complete all aspects of the internship. That means doing any field work, any lab work, any writing any of your reports, revisions, analyzing any of your data, doing your oral presentation or your defense, and submitting any of the forms that go along with that. It takes some time, and the average student needs at least 2 full semesters. So it could be summer semester and fall semester. It takes an average of 2 full semesters to get all of that done. So while you're doing all of this work for your internship, you're registered for an internship credit for each of those semesters. So on average, it's going to take you 2 full semesters, so you're going to need 2 internship credits. If you have a much longer internship, or it takes you much longer just to complete all those requirements, you're allowed to go over the 2. That's not a problem. But 2 is the minimum, because on average, it'll take you 2 semesters to get it all done. If you can get it all done in 1 semester, you can apply those 2 credits to that 1 semester and get it all done. That's why we have that 2 credit minimum though.
All right, so will MPS classes be on the Erasmus campus or main campus? That is a good question. I would say 95% of classes are held on the Rosenstiel campus. There are a couple that are held over on the main campus. For example, I think there are a couple marine mammal science classes that may be held over in the Unger building over on main campus. However, majority of those classes will be on the Rosenstiel campus. It doesn't matter if you're PhD, MS, MPS, students take the same classes. So it's not like there's any kind of separation between any of that as well. Generally, students engage in internships after their, okay, that's Kendra, sorry. Sean, go.
I see a question that says, when is the last day that an applicant should let us know about deferring? As soon as possible, but July 1st is reasonable. July 1st is also the last day that we're accepting applications for US citizens and US permanent residents. So that gives us enough time to adjust everything. And you can send that notice of deferment via email. It's as simple as that, and we'll respond to you.
Kendra, for tracks that don't start in spring, I know we've got TME doesn't start in spring. I believe weather forecasting doesn't start in spring. Do you have a handful of others? I think underwater, oh, I can't remember them all. Oh, you're muted. Kendra, you're muted. You're muted.
Sorry about that, forgot I was muted. I'm on the MPS website right now, and if I go to the About and then click down to FAQs, I believe it's number 17, which asks, are there options for spring enrollment? Spring enrollment is available for the following tracks: applied remote sensing, broadcast meteorology, coastal zone management, JD MPS, marine conservation, aquaculture, natural hazards and catastrophes, climate and society, and weather forecasting. Everything else is not accepted for spring, which is generally underwater archaeology, exploration science, tropical marine biology, and marine mammal science. And it's because of the way classes work that you're required to take some in the fall, and that's the only time they're offered in the fall. So anything else is pretty much offered in the spring. Again, it's on the MPS website under the Abouts tab, And if you click on FAQs, it's question number 17.
Awesome, thank you. Kat, if you are in here, and I'm sorry, I'm just getting to this, Michael. Can you move Michael over to the undergrad chat, Michael Joseph? And just like Kendra was saying, we're still looking at it for spring of this year too, because with the whole COVID thing, who knows? So we will look at everything when it comes to that, depending on where we're at that point in time. If you have the GRE score but not the GPA, could you still get the tuition waiver? Unfortunately, you have to have one or you have to have both to be able to get the waiver. That's just the way that we have our waivers set up. Okay. How do you transfer credits handled in the MPS program? So if you've taken, hopefully I don't confuse this. If you are taking graduate school credits right now, and they are not being applied to an undergraduate degree or any other degree, there is a chance that you can transfer those credits over to the MPS program up to 6 hours. Now, those 6 hours to be transferred, we have to have a syllabus. Obviously, we need a transcript to be able to look at those, but those have to be approved by faculty who are teaching those current classes where it would be a similar class to the one that you took to be able to get those credits. Kendra, anything else to add?
Yes, so if you believe that you have graduate level credits that didn't apply to a previous degree and might be relevant towards your MPS degree, send the MPS office an email along with your syllabus and any information you can. Our office will submit it to the relevant faculty at the Rosenstiel School to see if it would be relevant to your track or the MPS degree. If they say yes, then the MPS office will send you a link to where you formally submit a petition to transfer those credits. And that petition goes to our governing organization called the Graduate School, and they set the rules and policies for all graduate programs, not just MPS. So if you feel that you might have some graduate level credits that could be applied towards the MPS program, send us an email and we'll respond.
And I have a student who is asking if they could start their third career and going and becoming an MPS student. Absolutely. Now, majority of our students are between the ages of probably 22 to 35, but we do have a handful of students who come in trying to do a change of career. I remember one who was a lawyer who was probably 60, 65 years old and came through and wanted to kind of get just some changes on what they were doing with their life. And so they absolutely went through that program as well. Let's see, that's Alex, great. Are there other ways to show competence when applying besides a strong GRE if the undergraduate GPA is not quite up to par? I always stress people to work on your purpose statement. For us, that's a selling point. We need to know who you are. We need to know your background. We need to know why it is that you want to come to the University of Miami. Why is now the great time for you to go to school, etc. Letters of recommendation are going to be a huge help. We want to look and see, do you have faculty who are supporting you at your current institution or past institution? Do you have employers who you've worked with? Because we know that you're going to be going to the work field representing the University of Miami. So we want to make sure that we've got great students who are strong in all these other areas. Yes, GRE is important. Yes, GPA is important, but we know it's not everything. So we want to make sure that that you're kind of strong in all those different areas.
Yes, to elaborate on what Josh just said, the MPS program wants to look at the person in a holistic way, not just based on your grades and the resulting GPA. So when you are submitting your personal statement or statement of purpose and your resume, if you have one available,
Be sure to include as much information about your background, if you did any volunteer work, who you did the volunteer work, or if you got paid for it, what labs, who were the supervisors there, what was your project, what was the resulting of that project. Anything that gives us more insight into you besides just your grades. And we understand that sometimes students have lower grades in GPA at the beginning of their undergraduate career, and then they show significant improvement. That also works into how track leaders view your file. So the more information you can give to us, the better it is at evaluating you as a student for admissions, besides just your class grades and your GPA.
All right, so I see someone saying, so say it takes 2 semesters to complete, I'm assuming the academic coursework, does that mean you need a new internship each semester? So no, usually what happens is that first 2 semesters, you're just focused on academics. You're just in the classroom. You're getting all the skills needed during that time. And then you start that internship in summer into the next fall. And that's where you're kind of doing your internship. You only need 1 internship. You do not need multiple. Usually those internships are a minimum of 3 months, sometimes can go up to a year. I know Noah across the street takes on a student usually for a year-long opportunity, for example, in science communication. And so it kind of depends, internship, to see what everybody wants.
I have a correction. Thank you to Chad for pointing it out. The last day to submit applications for U.S. citizens and U.S. permanent residents is July 20th. Thank you for reminding me.
Let's see. I'm trying to make sure some people didn't answer these. If you don't have the required science courses needed for the marine science program, but a degree in environmental science, can you make up the science courses in the MPS program? So we do have requirements based off of each track. So there are some, especially on the biology side of things, so your tropical marine ecosystem management and your marine mammal science, for example, where they do require a little more science, whereas there are a handful like exploration science and marine conservation, for example, that only require a BS or a BA. So you can definitely still be accepted if you don't have as much of the science. And to be honest, we have a ton of students who come in with environmental science backgrounds. I would say probably 30% at least probably have environmental science, environmental studies kind of background. So definitely. Okay, scrolling. I've been out of school for a few years. What is the best options for letters of recommendation? Recent employers are great. I would always say, I mean, if you've been out for a while and you don't have a great relationship with a professor, or a professor's retired or something like that, don't go after those just because it's going to be an academic one. I would rather you have somebody who is actually knows who you are, whether maybe you're volunteering at a place that is marine or atmospheric science related. Maybe it is you know, an employer that may not have anything to do with what you're doing right now, but I think to see you in a working environment, having one of those is okay. But I would try to make sure that you get something that is related to the field in some kind of way, to be able to help our faculty to be able to see if this is going to be a good fit on their end.
I see a question that says, can you have classes for 3 semesters and do the internship for another semester, totaling 2 years for MPS? Yes, absolutely. The University of Miami requires all master's level students to complete their degree within 6 years' time. So you can take it however long you need within that time. After 6 years, the university has to assess whether they want to continue the relationship with the student or sever ties. So it's more about your personal finances and how you plan to space out your credits, whether you need to maintain full-time status or not. But yes, you can absolutely go up to 2 years and more, all the way up to 6 years.
And one of the nice things about the MPS program is the opportunity with those internship credits. You can, and I'm kind of going into the next question. You get up to 6 credits for your internship. If you use 1 credit as an internship, that does make you a full-time student. So there are some people who need to keep full-time student status. You can use one of those internship credits, taking only 1 hour total, and that will make you a full-time student. However, this person says for the final 6 credits that are the internship, you don't have to use 6 credits towards your internship. Like I kind of said earlier, I highly encourage students not to take 6 credits. I highly encourage you to only do the 2 credits so you can get more classwork under your belt. But it says, do some internships provide a stipend or work study? I would say a majority of the internships offer some kind of pay, whether it goes back to the credits. Now that's different. Usually there is a stipend or some kind of payment depending on what kind of, to be honest, it's really what track you're in. There are some tracks that will pay a little bit better. There are some tracks that a lot of it is volunteer. So it kind of depends in that area. If you have some more questions specific on that, shoot me a text and I can kind of talk to you offline on that as well. Oh, you asked that. Does it depend on individual programs? So yeah. All right. What are the deadlines for some of the grants available for the MPS program? Oh, okay. Kind of did that. I know in the application it has the option for evening and morning classes. To be honest, we're removing that question. So we, Kendra, what do you say? 90+% of our classes are between 9 and 5, probably 95%. So yes. Yeah, I mean, there's only a handful of courses. Like I know a teacher course that is from 4:30 to 7 p.m. on Mondays. You know, there's only a handful, very few that are in the evening. But we do have students who kind of schedule their stuff out where it's only Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday, something like that. So there are opportunities to be able to do that as well.
Yes, if you decide to take classes only every other day, that's completely fine. Again, it's up to you if you need to maintain full-time status and if you have enough credits to maintain that. Typically, if you decide to do, let's say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, it will take you longer to complete the MPS program. Again, it's not a problem. It's all up to your financial situation. The MPS program was designed to be completed roughly a little over a year. So if you start in the fall of 2020, you're going to be graduating in the fall of 2021, but you can take much longer time. I also see a question about international students, if they can choose part-time or full-time. The university requires MPS students to maintain full-time student status while they are in our program. Once a student is actually done with the class portion of MPS, you go on into the internship and you maintain full-time status by registering for internship credits. So even if you're just doing your internship project, you're still full-time as long as you're registered for that internship credit.
So just to make sure, international students have to be full-time.
International, yes, that is one of the requirements of your visa, your Form I-20 at UM is maintaining full-time status.
Awesome, perfect. I know people have classes. I know y'all are getting out all good. What's the advantage of being full-time versus part-time? Some of it depends on insurance, things like that. If you've got insurance with another way, whether it's your parents or something like that, it makes it a little bit easier to be part-time. Part-time, obviously, you're not paying all of that tuition up front. So there's definitely different ways to look at it. Some people like to go full-time to be able to finish quicker, which gets them into the working field a little bit faster. Some people like to go part-time because they're able to pay it off a little bit faster. So there's definitely positives and negatives to both of those. I know there are some on-campus job opportunities available, but are MPS students typically able to handle an off-campus part-time job with a typical course workload? Kendra, you want to talk on that?
Yes, so if you are following the MPS program the way it was designed to, which is an accelerated program, most of our students do not work, at least do not work full-time. They may pick up odd jobs like working at the bar at our wet lab, the bar on campus. They do tutoring, or they have an easier part-time job. The typical MPS student will take 12 credits during the fall and the spring. So that's an average about 4 classes. And these classes are typically, 9 to 5. And so you're going to be pretty busy during that time. as well as trying to engage in other events and activities related to the degree program, whether that's volunteer work in the lab or outside the university, trying to make those connections. So our students are pretty busy while they're in our program, and that doesn't leave too much time to do to have a job outside of the university, or even within that is too time consuming. So yes, it's possible, but it's all about how you manage your time and how many classes you're going to take each semester.
All right, I don't see anything else. Anybody have any other questions? If not, feel free, shoot me a text, shoot me an email. We can set up times to chat individually. Thank you to all of our faculty and students and admins for helping us with this. I'm pretty happy with it, especially not knowing how the heck this was going to go. And here's another one. Any housing advice for incoming students? That is a great question. I like to always say there's kind of two things. There's three ways to look at it. I always say the first way, which is like looking at Zillow or Realtor.com, which I highly encourage not to do. I think the best way for students, there are two different options that I think are the best options for you. One being, as soon as you verify that you are a student, we like to add students to our listservs. One of our listservs is the info listserv, where we do have lots of students, faculty, no affiliates who will actually send out housing opportunities that are out there. There are usually some MPS students who are kind of go-getters who might go get a 2, 3, 4 bedroom place and then like to rent out those rooms at a lot smaller prices. So that's one way. There are a lot of students who pass down their housing students to students. So that's always the number one way that I think of being able to do housing. The other option is there is an off-campus housing for University of Miami. I believe it's like, oh man, I just had it pulled up earlier. It's offcampus.miami.edu, and you can go there, and there are definitely going to be opportunities through the University of Miami for off-campus housing. Being a grad student at University of Miami, there is no on-campus housing. And being on Virginia Key, there's actually nobody who lives on Virginia Key. So that's kind of what I encourage students to do for the housing. Good. Sean, email, great. Perfect.
I did want to say if there are any, if anybody's interested in the MPS program and you want to be connected with a student that's currently in the program or a recent graduate from your track, or if you want to give us some information about what your career goals are, just send the office an email. We'll make email introductions with the current student or recent graduate. That way you and that student can connect directly, and you can get that student's perspective from their mouths instead of from, administrators or staff like us. And you guys can, Zoom or talk via telephone. So if you're interested in that, send us an email, tell us your track that you're interested in or you got accepted for, and what your career goals are, and we'll try to match you with somebody that fits that.
And any of y'all who are interested in going possibly to a PhD afterwards, but you're considering MPS right now, I put Emma's email in there earlier. It's just eponce@rasmus.miami.edu. She's a great one to contact with as well for that. Thank you, Anne, for library information as well. Anything else? 1 o'clock, I think that's good. All right, well, thank y'all. I'm gonna put my cell in there again for anybody else who needs anything. Feel free to shoot me a text. We can set stuff up, and we will hopefully see y'all in the fall. All right, thank y'all so much. Take care.